Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser. And for today's episode, this is one of the ultimate milestones in the podcast history, as we are now at episode 100. So super cool. And I couldn't think of a better guest to have on to celebrate this milestone than the one and only Dan Gorostiaga. He is known for being in one of the most beloved sludge, metal, hardcore, punk, you name it. They probably have done it all. Cavity and amongst many other bands. Dan is here to spend episode 100 with us. Dan, how are you?
Pretty good, Jeff. Good to meet you and good to be here today.
Same here. I know we've been talking and it's been great to just learn more about all the things that you've been doing over the course of your journey, because music is a big chunk of it.
It is,
but it's not all. So you are an artist as well, and you've done a lot of things on that side. And I can't wait to learn more about all the things that you've done over the course of your journey. So are you ready to take a trip back down memory lane and move along and through your life?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
All right. Fantastic. So we're going to go back to the very beginning, thinking about where you grew up. So let's talk about that, Dan, and tell folks out there a little bit about your upbringing.
Okay, cool. I'm originally from Argentina. So I got interested in music through my mom's family, actually. Do you know what I mean? My dad's, he doesn't have a big family. My mom does. She's got 5 sisters, 3 brothers. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot of people at my grandmother's house, and they had a record player. You know what I mean? Lots of vinyl, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Bill Haley. Do you know what I mean? Rock and roll stuff. So that's where I got into music, basically, through my uncles and aunts and everything, just seeing their collections. Deep Purple was a big thing back in the day too, for me when I was growing up.
Sure.
So that's where I got into music, basically, through them.
Did you have siblings?
I have one brother. Yeah, he's younger. I'm the oldest. So
Okay.
there was no one else really that, do you know what I mean? That was like telling me, oh, listen to this, listen to that. I mean, like the youngest aunt that I have, she's like 2 years older than me. Do you know what I mean? So we were pretty close, in age and everything. So they just introduced me to a lot of cool stuff, like art, comics, music, all kinds of cool things at my grandmother's house. You know what I mean? So.
And it's amazing how long these things have stayed with you, right? Because you're still into a lot of these things, I imagine.
Go navigating those worlds, you know what I mean? Like, I love magazines, I make zines, you know what I mean? The printed paper, I love that. I love paper, I like vinyl, although I don't have as much as I used to, you know what I mean? Because I've been moving around to different places. So my load has to be smaller every time I move. Unlike you, I see all that stuff behind you,
Right.
But yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I love music and like I said, art and like, comics and all that kind of stuff, because of them mainly. They just opened up all these worlds to me and
Nice.
like I said, I'm still doing it. So
Yeah, still doing it. And thinking about your early Florida period now,
right, yeah.
how did you get to Florida?
Yeah. Okay. So I came to the States in 86. I was 15, started high school without knowing the language, picked it up in 3 months pretty much. And I was into music already, like back in Argentina, like my first show, I went to, it was in Argentina actually. I was 12. I went to see, I even got this to show you. I went to see this band called V8, just like the engine.
Yeah.
Not like the juice, you know what I mean? And they were kind of like a Motorhead type of like band, kind of metal like that a little bit.
Were
And
they from Argentina?
they're from Argentina, yeah.
Okay.
And I went to see them when I was 12. I asked my mom, like, could I go to the show? Because I had been listening to like heavy guitar. I love guitars. You know what I mean? That's my thing. Like anything with guitars, I'm definitely into. And there was like some radio shows I started to listen to, the show like hard rock and then some local bands too. And there was like a big wave of like punk and metal, you know what I mean? So these guys were playing close to where I lived. And I said to my mom, can I go? She's like, not by yourself, your uncle can take you. So we went. It was at a small pub, they put some like pool tables together that became the stage, you know what I mean? Like, and they played on like three bands played on top of that. Very small space, you know what I mean? And I was 12, I was in the back, sort of, trying to see everything. And it was really cool, that whole experience, to see live music just like that, very close by, you know what I mean? Like people right in front of you, basically. That was amazing, So that was then, that was in Argentina. I went to three shows in Argentina. That one, I went to a big festival, in like a soccer stadium and then to see some really cool bands, like this one here, Sumo, and then this band, Los Violadores. And these guys were on a comp, the Peace Comp that who put it out? Somebody on the West Coast, you know what I mean? Put it out. It had bands from all over the world, and these guys were on it actually. You know, so I went to see the pub show, then the festival at this big soccer stadium, and then another small show. You know what I mean? So I did see three shows back in Argentina, and then I moved to the States. So I get to the States in May, right? And then I start meeting some people at school. You know what I mean? And then there was a show, July 4th, that Meatmen played at the Cameo Theater, and I went to that show. That was my first show in the States, which was pretty crazy.
Oh, I bet. Did you know who the Meatmen were? Did you just go because that was something people were just doing and something?
People were talking about it, because they had a really cool shirt, like with the Meatmen and you suck or something like that,
Right.
cool graphics, you know what I mean? Like, and somebody at school mentioned that I was hanging out with some kids who were into metal at school, and then I met this kid called Tony Torre. And he's another link, you'll see like in a minute. So he said, yeah, there's a show coming up at the Cameo, and everybody was talking about the Cameo, like, oh, the Bad Brains are coming. The Bad Brains, who are the Bad Brains? And then I saw a flyer, and I was just like, oh man, these guys are playing, you know what I mean? So like, Tony mentioned, and some of the people, oh, dude, the Meatmen are coming, so you should go see them. I went to that show, and it was great, and I got hooked. Like that was the place to go every weekend. Do you know what I mean? The Cameo had a show pretty much, at least one or two, back in the mid 80s. And it was the place to go. But I mean, we're teenagers, you know what I mean? We
Right.
needed something to do. And to me, that was my high school, the Cameo, basically.
Sure. How were you
That
getting
became,
there? Was it close enough to walk, or did you have to
it
get
was,
a
no, no,
ride?
no.
Or
Well, I had to have first, I think my parents dropped me off like a block away from it. You know what I mean? Like for the first show. And then Tony, who I mentioned, he had a car. He was a senior at my high school. I went to Miami High and he did too, you know? And we started hanging out a little bit more. And he lived close to my house, man. He lived like 4 blocks away from my house. So we would get dropped off from the bus. I would go to his house, hang out, listen to records, and then go to my house later on. So we became kind of tight, and yeah, like a little, his hair was kind of long, but on weekends he would spike it up, kind of like a GBH type thing. It was crazy. It was awesome. Um, so he, got me into a bunch of bands. He showed me a bunch of bands he was collecting and stuff like that. But he would drive us to the shows, not all the time, and then other friends had cars and things.
sure.
And then I got a car in 10th grade. So then I
Okay.
started driving myself and other people too.
What was
So
your first car?
it was a Camaro Z28.
Oh, nice.
Is that what they're
What?
called? I
Yeah.
think Fausta mentioned it, but it wasn't brown, it was white.
Okay.
It was a white
Okay.
Camaro,
White Camaro.
two-door. It looked like a Porsche.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the model number is or whatever, but you know what I'm talking about.
Sure. Yeah, I
Camaro.
do. I mean,
My
that's not
dad
a
gave
bad
it.
first car for someone in 10th
It
grade.
wasn't. Yeah, yeah, it wasn't. And like my dad just gave it to me. My dad, he's a body man, so he's always around cars, you know. And he's like, "Well, I'm going to give you this car. You're of age already. Blah blah blah. Get your license." And boom, I got the car. So it was cool, man. It was just like I became like a magnet for a bunch of people because they needed rides to the shows. You know what I mean? So like I became the guy to call. Hey, can you give me a ride? So in that sense, it was cool. But yeah, I mean, I got hooked going to the Cameo and meeting people at the Cameo was great. Like you would meet people from South Miami High, from Kendall, from everywhere. They would just congregate at the Cameo. So like I said, that became my high school. Like I had a few friends in high school, but most everybody was just kind of like reggae's, you know what I mean? Just into whatever mainstream stuff, you know what I mean? Just a few skaters,
Sure.
Tony, and then the metal kids, so.
Were you
um,
aware of any
mm.
bands that were going on at Miami High at that time?
Actually, Tony, he was in a band. It was called Morning Breath. like I'll show you a flyer now. It's this band right here. He was in this band right there, Morning Breath, and it was him, this guy Al played guitar, and then a drummer. And he's like, "Yeah, dude, what are you doing on a Saturday?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing. You want to come to practice?" I was like, "Practice?" He's like, "Yeah, I got a band." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool, man." Like, so I went, and it was really cool, man. Just like they had like three, four songs, you know what I mean, pretty fast or whatever, the usual thing. And they were a three-piece, you know what I mean, vocals, guitar, and drums. I don't even know who played drums. I don't remember. But I was just sitting in the back watching them, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to sit back and watch them do it. I want to do it. You know what I mean? So then
Sure.
I asked my parents, hey, I want to get a guitar. So they got me a cheap guitar. I brought it home and I'm like, how do you play this thing? I just could not figure it out. You know what I mean? So I was like, next best thing is like bass. So I was like, okay, I want to get a bass. Got the bass and boom, I was on it. Do you know what I mean? I could actually do things with the bass. I'm a failed guitar player, I guess. You know what I mean? But the bass, I can do stuff. I can do patterns, you know what I mean? I can do a bunch of things. And I'm like, this is what I want to play. And I
Sure.
had seen people before, like Lemmy and like Nikki Sixx, he wrote a bunch of songs for Motley Crue. The bass player wrote songs, like I was just thinking that in my head. And I'm like, that's cool, man. Like bass is a great instrument. And it's my instrument just because like through it, do you know what I mean? Like I can build the things I want to make. Do you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So
Sure. As you were
guitars.
getting older, did you learn about other bass players who became influences and people you just admired?
Yeah, yeah. I can't really say now, you know what I mean? Like, but I mean, I was just looking at examples, you know what I mean? Like, did other people play bass and like contributed to the songs? Do you know what I'm saying? Like early on. And I was just like, oh, Lemmy, he did a bunch of things. He wrote most of the music for Motorhead, well, a lot of it. And then Nikki Sixx, and then, oh, the guy from Iron Maiden. Do you know what I mean? Like all those, whatever. On the credits, it says Steve Harris, and then like, Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols and people like that. Do you know what I mean? Credit. Oh, Glenn
Right.
Matlock, bass player. Wow. You know what I mean? Like, so I would find different people. I'm like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. You know what I mean? This isn't weird. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I'm playing bass, I'm contributing, which is something normal. So it's not always guitar players,
Right.
so anyway, I don't know where this is going to take us next, Jeff. Yeah. So,
Well, I
mhm.
really like learning about how you started to learn how to play the bass.
Right,
Guitar
right.
was the original instrument, and then you
Mhm.
transitioned to bass. So,
Yeah.
how long after that did you
Mhm.
wind up starting your own band or just becoming someone who joined a band?
Right, right. Okay, so there were two links, like Tony was one, and then the other link was Scott Baldwin. He went to school with my brother, you know what I mean? So I met Scott and he played guitar. So I saw Tony like playing in the band. I'm like, oh, I want to do that, right? And then I met Scott and he's like, I play guitar already. And, him, my brother, and myself were like, oh, let's start a band or something, So I got the bass. And then Scott showed me a bunch of things on the bass, how to tune it and things like that. But I'm self-taught. So I'm not a wizard on the bass. I just write things, you know what I mean? So, but with Scott, we started writing things and learning some songs, and then we were like, oh, let's just write our own songs, So we started writing our songs, and then we just got something together, and just, it became a band pretty quick, and we call it Dead End. That was our first incarnation of a band, pretty much, And we had actually, Dennis. Do you know Dennis Munoz? Do you know what that is?
The name sounds familiar.
He plays in Anger or played in
Yeah, it's
Anger.
anger.
He went to my high school too, and I met him there. And through him, I met Tiny. You know Tiny from Anger, the drummer?
Yep.
Okay. So he lived in the neighborhood close to Scott's house, and Scott had a big house, man, like a 2, 3 story house, like an older home, And we used to practice in the living room. And Tiny played drums for us a couple times, which wasn't like a good mix, you know what I mean? Because he's just like, and we're like just learning Ramones type stuff, you know what I mean?
Okay. I was wondering, like, how would you describe the sound of Dead End?
It was just, you know, very basic, hardcore-ish type of stuff, like we were listening to Minor Threat and people like that, which again, Minor Threat is very advanced for guitars and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it's kind of like Ramonesy, like just the four notes, the four chords or whatever.
Sure.
Very basic stuff, like, and, we had a couple of practices with Tiny and we're like, oh, cool, man, this isn't working out, like, so it wasn't like a bad, you know what I mean? Like, type of thing. But it wasn't, he was doing other stuff. He was just doing us a favor because we wanted to get something together. And then we just, kept telling people, oh, we have a band. We have a band, no drummer. And we used to go, just like Fausta said, there was a lot of like backyard parties that Morning Breath played. Also, Misguided Children was another band that never recorded, but they were from my neighborhood too. You know what I mean? Like, so those two bands. At the same time, we were listening to people who made demos like Chocolate Grasshopper, Cultural Brain Rot, NDY. Do you know what I mean? We knew they were local from somewhere in Miami.
Right.
Not sure where, but they had tapes. You know what I mean? They went to studio. They were like musicians, more advanced than us, I guess. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Because they had done stuff. So we were listening to them, and then hanging out with these people, from It's Got a Children, Morning Breath, and then other people started showing up, like Fausto. He's not from the Coral Gables area. He's from South Miami. He would show up to these places, and I don't know who introduced us, but somebody said, "Oh, this guy plays drums." Dude, let's get together and just see what happens. And we did, and so that was the next incarnation or whatever, a band.
Did
And
you
that
and Fausto hit it off that quick?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was pretty fast, man, because we told them we have songs. We have songs already. Like, you want to jam and just, um, you know, we had ideas for drums. You know what I mean? Like, but we just showed him to him. He's like, "Oh, cool, I can do something." You know what I mean? Like, just show me. Like, and he was the first drummer I've seen that plays, like open. Do you know what I'm saying? Instead of like this way. And we're like, "Oh, that's odd," but he was doing everything he needed to do, just doing it
Sure.
that way. We're like, "Oh, cool." So we got along pretty well. You know what I mean? I mean, my brother and Scott, they were younger. I think Faust and myself were like about the same age, pretty much. You know what I mean? Like, so. So we hit it off and we started hanging out and just playing, and just building a set. And we did a lot of backyard parties. I'm not sure if we did anything more than backyard parties with Fausto. You know what I mean? Because at some point, like, um, genetic mistake, showed up in the scene, and he's like,
Sure.
"Oh, I want to go with these guys." We're like, "That's cool, man." Um, so then, out of him leaving, then we got a drummer, which was actually the guitar player from Morning Breath. This guy Al. He switched to drums. He's like, "Yeah, guys, I can do drums." Like, so that became like a more compact unit. You know what I mean? And then my brother left, and we got Adele to sing, Adele Soto. So that became the band right there. We became more, tighter, and then doing actual shows. Like, we played at Echoes or something like that in Broward with Government Issue. That DC band. We play with them.
Sure.
We opened up
Right.
for them. And then a bunch of other actual shows, at different spots. Like, I don't recall the spots right now, but something beyond a party or, like, you know what I mean, backyard show or like a house show.
This is Violent
Yeah,
Deed at this point.
Violent Deed. Yes, yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And there's even a recording. We went to a studio and did a recording, which I don't have. I know probably Scott has a copy of this. He might have a copy. I think Al, the drummer, might have one. I'm not sure if Adele has one. Like, I think we've spoken about this, but I think he might have one too. I don't have one. I have other things that I sent you, like some photos of things, of like demos and things like that. But yeah, this is Violent Deed, and we were pretty busy, doing stuff. And then we said, we have to document this, like, because,
Right.
we were reading about DC bands, documenting, but we're like, oh, we got to do the same thing. We got to have some kind of physical documentation of what we're doing. And, we did go to, like I said, a studio. It wasn't what we wanted. It wasn't at all what we wanted. But I don't even recall the studio really. You know what I mean? Like, it was someplace that was a recording studio. They weren't used to our sound in any way.
Right.
But we did do like a bunch of songs, and somebody has a copy. And then we kept going, and then we got offered to play with Youth of Today
Wow.
at the Cameo. But I had to go to Argentina the same night. I was flying
Oh,
away.
wow.
So we got somebody else to play bass. You know what I mean? So there's a recording from that show. We used to get like give the guy at the mixing deck or whatever, the soundboard, hey, just pop this in and record us. You know what I mean? Like, so we had a bunch of live tapes back then too. And there's a document of that show. And that's what I sent you, like that photo of that demo.
Yep.
It's that recording, which I'm not on. So and then after that, we just I don't know, just things got, like people wanted to do other stuff. And, we just kind of said, okay, let's just call it a day, so, but that's violent deed, and I don't know if I said too much about that. You know what I mean? Like,
No, that's fantastic because as I
yeah,
was telling Fausto, there
right.
really isn't a lot you can
Right.
find around the origins and the history of Violent Deed. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know too,
Mhm.
who did the artwork for the demo? Because there was this image of
Mm.
a
The little
guy
guy
of some kind. Yeah, yeah,
with the
yeah.
flat top. Yeah,
Right.
that's me. I came up with it,
Okay.
which I based it off of another flyer that I had seen from a band called Sacred Denial or something like that. I don't know where they're from. I forget now. I got to look at the flyer. But I looked at this little guy, like he was, profile, and I was like, he had like, I don't know, like I think he had like a beanie or something. It's like, oh, let's just do something like it and just put a flat top on it, on the little guy. So I started drawing that little guy. We had
Right.
shirts. We did some shirts with that little guy on, and then the whole like this was like 87, so like we were going from like 7 seconds, you know what I mean, to like I don't know, GBH, whatever. And then, you know what I mean? Like the youth crew started to like popping in. Do you know what I mean? Like Revelation Records, Schism, and all that stuff. So there
Sure.
was like, oh, straight edge, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, oh, let's dress this guy like this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the hooded sweatshirt and everything.
And he had an X on his fist.
On that record. Yeah. On that cassette. Yeah. Yeah. On that
Cassette.
cassette. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was towards the end. We're like, oh, we're going to do
Okay.
Swedish bands.
Did you
Okay.
guys identify at any point as a straight edge band?
I think we were kind of like, I think we were all that way, and without calling ourselves, you know what I mean, straight edge. We're kind of like there already, you know what I mean. But it was towards the end of the band, we're like, oh, we like these bands, you know what I mean. So, oh, let's just call ourselves straight edge, like so. It was just a thing, just like I don't want to say a fad, you know what I mean, but it was just something happening in the air, you know what I mean. Like a lot of bands were dying down, and this was like the new breed that was coming in, and we're like, we could identify with those bands. It's like, oh, so I guess we're gonna call ourselves a straight edge band or something,
Sure.
So.
Especially down in Miami, because I don't think there was a
Right.
lot of that going on at that time. If there was, any
Mhm.
bands come to mind?
No, no, I mean, we had seen, I mean, like, we went to a show, I mean, like a pretty good show. It was Dag Nasty, 7 Seconds, and Youth of Today back in 87.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was a great show. And we got to meet the Youth of Today guys, like I bought their Breakdown the Walls record. It's all warped, you know what I mean? Because it was during the summer or whatever. But I was like, oh, guys, you need to sign this. Or like Richie and Purcell signed my record on the back, which was pretty cool. And we're like, we like these bands, so we started looking at bands like that, you know what I mean? Like, and they were on Wishing Well Records, which had like Half Off, a bunch of like new bands, Blast, do you know what I mean, that we had never
Sure.
heard of. So we started getting into those bands too. But there was like the whole like, whatever, that new energy that came with that music. Do you know what I mean? We're like, we want to tight, like we like that sound, you know what I mean? Let's try to emulate it a little bit, and just mix it in. But as far as bands, I know there was a guy, man, like I forget the name of his. He used to put out a zine. I think his first name was Stan, but I forget the last name. Not Stan Ogle. I don't know. That's another person. I'm pretty sure. But he ran a zine called Thinking Cap. Thinking Cap zine. But this is back in the late '80s. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um,
I've heard of it.
You've heard of? Okay, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah. I
have.
used to
Yeah.
have a copy somewhere, but I can't find it.
They're hard to track down.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that he moved, like he was down here and then he moved to I don't know, up north or something. You know what I mean? Like, but he did mention some things in the zine, what I mean, about straight edge and things like that. And we're like, oh, let's read more about it. So it was interesting. There was a whole, I mean, those guys invaded every scene pretty much. Do you know what I mean? At that time, late 80s, like Youth of Today, and then people on the West Coast and blah, blah, blah. And then myself and Scott, we used to write to everybody. You know what I mean? Like just write letters, pen pals or whatever, and trade tapes. That was a big thing with us, like we used to meet people. It's just like, oh, they would come down. It's like, oh, dude, yeah, what's up? Like we finally meet or whatever.
Sure.
But we used to write to a lot of people, and so like that's how we got a lot of our bands known, it's trading tapes and things like that, But
Is
as
there
far
anybody you can remember from that time period
for that time frame,
from pen
yeah,
pals that you're still in touch with today because of the fact that you were pen
because of the
pals
fact
back
that
then? Yeah.
maybe not in touch still, you know what I mean? But like bands will come down like up front. You know what I mean? Like you've heard of that band, like, dude, we used to write to those guys all the time, like, I can't remember any other bands. Well, like, and then later on, even with Cavity, you know what I mean? Like, I used to write to a bunch of people, like, so a bunch of people, like, from like Men as a Bastard, pretty much. I used to write to those guys. Do you know what I mean? Write to the guys from I Hate God. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like with Joey, their drummer, and the bass player. Just a bunch of people. Like us, we keep talking. I'm sure I'll bring them up. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But a lot of connections because of like just writing to people.
Right.
Like a lot of good connections and trading tapes and things. Like meeting people from fanzines and everything. It was a big thing, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You can get a
It
fan
was the only way, right? I mean, what other way
pretty much,
was
yeah.
there?
Yeah, yeah. That was our internet. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
back then, like you can get a zine and then on the back there were like people offering their live tapes to trade, like you can look up, I don't know, Youth of Today at whatever, and then the Exploited at this place, you know what I mean, from the soundboard.
Yeah.
Like, oh, cool, man, let's trade. You know what I mean? Like, so it was really cool to make those connections and just get music out of it.
Sure. Do you think
Yeah,
at this time this
right.
was helping to inspire you even more to do even more as far as bands
Yeah.
and what you could actually put out?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Because we can see, I mean, people going on tours and things like that. You know what I mean? Like Youth of Today, and like that's not the only band, but you know what I mean? Just kids getting into a van and just going. You know what I mean? It wasn't like Black Flag. You know what I mean? Like older bands or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like younger bands just going out there and just going on tour. So that's one of the things we wanted to do. With Violent Deed, we only played mainly. I think we played Broward. We might have played West Palm, but that's doubtful. Do you know what I mean? Like it was mainly Dade County, the beach, and then just Miami in general, Kendall, South Miami, Coral Gables, whatever, but nothing beyond that. But it was cool to read about like, tour diaries and everything. It's like, oh, dude, that'd be really cool to go on tour,
Yeah.
and take our stuff out there. But we have to record, we have to make a 7-inch or a tape or something to like advertise.
Right.
So that got into my head, you know what I mean? Like we have to document everything that we do. Let's try to document in some way.
Sure.
So
Were
like,
you aware of what was going on though in places like Palm Beach with bands like the Roids and the Raging Puss Bags?
yeah, dude, hold on. The Royds. Yeah, they were from Palm Beach. I pulled out a flyer and I think we played with them a lot. Just make sure. Okay, so this is one show that I was telling you about. This one government issue, violent deed. You know what I mean? I know everything's backwards, but um, uh, here it is. Okay, the Royds. I played a show with them, the same venue or whatever, with Powerhouse actually, not with, you know what I mean? But yeah, we had heard of bands, like the Royds from Palm Beach. Like I said, Chocolate Grasshopper, Cultural Brainrot, Flaw. Flaw has been around forever too. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we used to see Evan at the shows, him and like Rabbi, they were just like they stood out so much. Do you know what I mean? Like he's like skinny guys with like little dreads and everything, hanging
Sure.
out with everybody under Doc Martens, we're like, oh, these guys, man, they're just everywhere pretty much. And they were pretty cool to meet and everything. But yeah, like more local bands that I can remember right now, that weren't from like our circle. Do you know
Right.
what I mean? Like Genetic Mistake or Misguided Children, things like that. Like I'm thinking of like I said, those bands like that I'll mention again, Chocolate Grasshopper, a really good demo. I'm sure you've heard it.
Of
Uh,
course.
Cultural Brainrot, which I have a bunch of flyers that says that we play with them, but I don't remember them showing up. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I don't think they played, for A or B or C or whatever.
Right. But their
Uh,
legacy is the flyer.
yeah, yeah, the flyer. We had the flyer, and then their cassette, man, like their demo was really good. It
Yeah.
was really inspiring. Like who else? Let me just look through my little flyers that I pulled together. Um, then there was also Indecision from Kendall or that area. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? South.
Sure.
You heard of them?
I
Have you heard of
have.
them? Yeah.
Yes.
They were around too. Really good band, man. Really good band. Their drummer Bill was amazing. You know what I mean? Just a really good drummer. So I remember those guys. You know what I mean? Like, um, and then not that yet. Which I think we saw them or play with them a couple of times. And that's about it. So like as far as those days, like those early bands, that's what I remember the most. So
I know you mentioned the Cameo as one venue, and
yes,
you mentioned the backyards, the house parties, that sort of thing.
right, right.
But were there any other places you can remember in this time period
In that
that
time period.
you were also playing gigs at, or maybe even going to just, or you're just going
Yeah.
shows?
Yeah, let me think. Churchill's wasn't a thing yet. I know that. Um, the beach only had the Cameo. You know what I mean? This is mid to late 80s, right? Mainly the Cameo was the place that we used to go to a lot. Like, oh man, I wanted to mention this. We went to a show, I think it was in Del Rey. Like I think that guy Stan from Thinking Cap mentioned it or something like that. And like, oh, we're gonna go. There was at a little bar, there was no one there, like dingy bar, you know what I mean? But this band from Gainesville called Doldrums, they played. And we got this tape that night. Dude, it was just amazing. Just an amazing band that just came through to play at some little bar, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some small bar in Del Rey, I think it was. Um, really, and they didn't look like kids playing. They were just like men already. You know what I mean? Like they look older, you know what I mean, than us or whatever, but like, dude, this demo is so good. And then I think what's his name? VAR from No Idea, you know what I mean?
Right.
I think he put out a 7-inch by them
He
in
did.
one of his
I think that was No Idea one with the
it could
first
be.
zine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like which I don't have the vinyl. I can't find the vinyl. I got the zine, but I can't find the vinyl. But it was just like the recording was totally different, man, from the demo. The demo was just amazing, dude. Just
Sure.
really good.
Never
Uh,
seen the demo. Can you
Yeah,
show
yeah,
the
yeah,
front of it?
yeah, yeah. That's that, and then it's just like an older person in a home
Very
or
cool.
something, I guess.
That's an artifact right there.
Yeah, dude, like it's really good, man. Like, and I wanted to mention, I just pulled it out from my pile too. It's like I got to mention these guys that were so good, man. Like, it just it gave us like, man, there are other things that you can do with music too. You know
What
what I
an
mean?
odd place that had to happen in Del Rey, I feel like. Because I haven't had many
Yeah,
people come on who've mentioned a lot of shows that were
right.
in Del Rey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, like I mean, other places. Let's see. I can't remember, man. Like just mainly the Cameo. That was our magnet every weekend. Just boom. No matter who was playing, we would
Right.
just go. I remember
Sure.
one time, and the beach was like just a free for all, pretty much back then. Um, it was just like a bunch of like crazy people and just older folks. You know what I mean, living there too, abandoned buildings and all that stuff. Like I do remember. I want to mention this, dude. Like I went to see a band called Stevie Stiletto. I think they were from up north.
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They came down to play a show, and it was a rainy night at the Cameo, you know. And this guy showed up, man, in a really cool, like 60s car. You know what I mean? Looked like a boat, you know what I mean? Like amazing. And parked right in front of the Cameo. He comes out to, he looks like Johnny Thunders, long black hair, you know what I mean? Like, and we're like, dude, what a cool car, man. Like, and then the guy comes out and goes to the door to do something to try to pay for the show, I guess, and forgot something, goes back to the car, opens the door, and while he's looking for something, the door is open. Some guy comes over and just like takes the door with him. You know what I mean? Right in front of the Cameo, you know, and he's like, huh? Do you know
Welcome
what I
to
mean? It was just like
Miami.
yeah, Miami Beach, man. It was just like
Right.
it's a crazy place to be at, you know what I
Wow.
mean? Like, and those nights, like mid to late 80s and stuff,
Did you
like
actually get a chance to see them play at the
I
Cameo?
did see. I saw them twice.
Oh,
I
nice.
saw them twice. I'm pretty sure it was at the Cameo. Like really good band, man. They used to do some covers. I think. Like I haven't checked their stuff in many years, but
Yeah.
I used to have one of their singles or two of them. I bought
Right.
them, but I can't find them anymore from all the moves that I've done throughout the years. Like.
Yeah. Do you think
But
going back in your memory that that could be one of the first
mm,
Florida bands that you remember getting exposure to who were from North
mhm.
Florida?
No, no, no. I mean, like we got to see Chocolate Grasshopper. I keep mentioning them. They used to play the Cameo quite a lot. They used to open up. They did open up for a bunch of bands, and they played that infamous Blast show. Have you
Right.
heard of it? Have you heard of
Absolutely.
that show?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So I had three members from Chocolate Grasshopper come on the
Okay.
podcast and tell that
And they
story.
mentioned it.
Now, a lot of those guys were
Mhm.
originally from South Florida, but
Yes.
some of them moved up north to Gainesville later
Okay.
on in
So yeah.
college. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and they became Radon and some other bands
Correct.
too. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So, but no, we used to see them, and we're like, dude, they're from here, man. That's cool. You know what I mean? Like Chocolate Grasshopper. Then other Florida bands, Stevie Stiletto, The Roids. We got to see them a couple of times. Doing Violent Deed. Other Florida bands, Rugged Edge. We got to see a couple of times at the Cameo also. Um,
What'd you think of Rugged Edge?
they were cool, man. They were cool. Like A friend of mine had one of their singles,
Yeah.
like, but I could be totally wrong, man, about this. But I think they had a song about Hialeah or something like that. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I think from the single my friend showed me, it's like some song called Hialeah, but I could be totally wrong. But it was just like do you know what I mean? Like a very like primitive cover, do you know what I mean? Photocopy, which was like rugged edge and like, it was almost like handwritten or something. Do you know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
And it had like the big hole on it. It was like a single. It wasn't a 7 inch.
Right.
So yeah, so local bands, that were just, like I said, from like, not from our circle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Chocolate and Supper, um, The Roids, Rugged Edge, Stevie Stiletto. Um, and then that drawing a blank on
Yeah.
anyone else, if
Oh,
there was some
yes.
other
Yeah.
names,
Yeah.
from that time period.
Yeah.
So
And when you were getting more into the
mm,
youth crew style, you
right.
mentioned Youth of Today,
Sure.
you mentioned other bands from Wishing Well Records.
Yeah, yeah.
Revelation was getting ready to really
Getting
blow
ready.
up as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Mm.
is this when Powerhouse was starting to come together at that point?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like we weren't a part of the original Powerhouse. Like the original lineup was Tim, Ivan, and a drummer. You know what I mean? So yeah, towards the end of Violent Deed, you know what I mean? That's when we heard the Powerhouse demo. And we're like, oh, this sounds really good, man. Like it was like our vibe at the moment. We're like, oh, this is really cool. Um, and then we met Tim, and he's like, we got a spot if you guys want to play with us. You know what I mean? We want to have a full band. And then they got rid of the drummer who played on the demo, and they got Andrew Powell, which I'm sure you know who that is. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like, and we used to see Andy at all the shows too. Like at a bunch of shows. There was a change. There was a shift too. You know what I mean? I'll mention this about the Cameo. Cameo used to attract a bunch of people, weekend punks, and you know what I mean, like, and other subcultures. I want to call them whatever. You know what I mean? Groups of people. You know what I mean? Um, so there was a point like we got to see like some huge shows, you know what I mean, at the Cameo, like GBH, it was packed, do you know what I mean? Suicidal Tendencies, The Exploited, you could, everybody would go see them, you know what I mean? Like, um, so there was that, you know what I mean? But then like the youth crew, like, do you know what I mean? It attracted more people, but then we were just kind of like we weren't just going to the shows. We were doing more than just going to the shows. We were playing, playing in bands. We were like putting out fanzines, trying
Right.
to put on a show. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we kind of became more active and kind of like got in touch with people who did the same type of things. Do you know what I mean? Or the musicians, not just people who went to the shows, just part of the audience. Do you know what I'm saying? Not that we were better or whatever, but like we
Sure.
were just kind of like, okay, these guys do that. Let's just meet up with them and hang out and whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
so that's how
Did
we
you
met.
know, though, who was
Mhm.
bringing these bands in at that time?
There was something called GSP Productions, which was, I think, the production company of the Cameo. You know what I mean? I don't know what they did, man. Like I just questioned that myself now, because people complained like, we don't want to drive down to Miami just because it's so far away from like Georgia, let's say. But dude, back then everybody would come down to the Cameo. GBH, Exploited, other big bands that I can't remember now. You know what I mean? 7 Seconds, Lords of the New Church, whoever. You know what I mean? They would come down to the Cameo to play South Beach. You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't a question like, oh, I don't know how much we're going to get paid or whatever. They would
Right.
just go, make it down, and a bunch of people goes New Order, whoever. You know what I mean? They would play the New Model Army,
It
which
could
was
have also been their vacation, too.
yeah, yeah, that
It's
too. Yeah, yeah.
possible.
Yeah, yeah. But they were also going on like national tours, so we knew about it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like so, and just everybody used to make it to the Cameo. So like
Sure.
I don't know what they did, what kind of offers they were giving people or whatever, I mean, guarantees and all that stuff. But people did make it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a thing like, I don't know if we want to make it to the Cameo, or to like down to Miami. It's like, dude, it's just everybody did, like every weekend for like the better part of like while I was there, mid to late 80s, what I mean, when the Cameo was a big thing, like,
Absolutely.
um, so like I was saying, like, we were just meeting other people who were doing other stuff, like Andy was playing drums. We met Tim and Ivan. And then other people, Adele was doing bands and like promoting stuff. You know what I mean? Like, so we just kept that circle of people, around us, Um,
Do any Powerhouse shows stand out to you in your memory as some
Oh
of the
yeah,
favorites
let me
you're going
just
to
talk
play
about that.
someday?
Yeah, yeah. Like Tim said, look, we have our demo. You guys can learn the songs. Just show up. We'll do this. We went to Ivan's house at the beach in North Beach, North Miami Beach, and we had a practice. Everything clicked. We're like, cool. This is awesome. You know what I mean? It was like the sound we wanted to do at the moment. You know what I mean? With those songs that were really good. And then Andy was just like, awesome drummer. Like he could do anything, you know what I mean, on the drums. And like, it was a lot of fun, man, just jumping around and just like a lot of energy, like, so with Powerhouse, I was in the band for about, I don't know, man, like maybe 4 months, I would say. Not a long time, you know. Um, I know I recorded a 7-inch with them and I played two big shows with them. I played at the Cameo,
Right.
Brotherhood, and the Accused. That was a big show. And then we did that show, which I have the flyer of right here. It was like that big show, man, but like Powerhouse Fall upfront release, like at this like tiny, I think it was Palm Springs. Oh, sorry, dude. GSP was someone from Palm Beach. Sorry. GSP was it was Mary from Palm Beach, which was Ray's mom. And Ray played in The Believers. That was another band we got in touch with around that time too.
Right. That
You
makes
know what I
sense
mean?
because I
Yeah.
remember when the Believers came on
Hmm.
to do their episode,
Yeah.
they mentioned that story. And what was it like playing with
Mhm.
them back then? Because they were a Palm Beach band.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They were from Palm Beach, and I forgot to mention them, dude. Like, but we got to meet them, towards the end. They went to see Violent Deed a couple of times, so we met them there. But again, they just like they look like older guys, you know what I mean? Not just like a bunch of kids like us. And we're like, oh, these guys are
Yeah.
playing. Cool, man. And they were really cool. Tony, awesome. Then their bass player was really cool too. Um, and they had another drummer at that time, like
And
and
Chad was
then
on guitar, I want to say.
Chad was on guitar. Yeah, yeah, okay. And yeah, it was Chad and Tony that we talked to a lot, you know what I mean, at shows, and we would see them all the time.
Right.
Um, so yeah, we got to meet them and see them at shows. I think we played a couple of shows with them, through Violent Deed. And then Violent Deed came to an end. We said we just want to go our own separate ways. And then Tim offered, for us to join Powerhouse, and we did. And then we got to see Tony and those guys more. Um, but then the Believers got rid of their drummer and they got Ray Titus, I think is his last name. Like, and his mom was Mary Titus, and she started doing shows you know. So we came up a couple of times and stayed with Ray and his mom at their house up here in Palm Beach, you know. So that was like the farthest we would drive, you know what I mean, with those bands. It was like Palm Beach. Oh man, that's pretty far, like
Yeah, it's
uh,
almost like another world considering how far you are south,
oh no, dude, like it was. I mean, even Broward for us, you know what I mean, like being like Dade County kids, we would
Yeah,
go to Broward. We're like, dude, this is weird. It's kind of scary. You know what I mean? Like to us, we're like just different vibe. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
a bit more violent, I would say, in Broward. At different shows, there's a
Interesting.
different vibe. Or like, oh, we're in a different country. And then to Palm Beach, it was like it was like something else entirely too. Um, but yeah, I was gonna say with Powerhouse, like I did those two shows, the Cameo, and then this show, and it was a big show, like at a small place, and we built the stage and everything, which I had experience already from doing the backyard parties and everything. We helped put that together. Um, but that was a really cool show, man. Like I'm sure you've seen pictures of that show,
Yes,
with up front. It was just like
absolutely.
it was like our dream. We see like these bands like up north, you know what I mean? Like people piling up and like on top of one another playing, you know what I mean? And we got to do that at that show. It was really cool. It was very memorable, and there's a lot of pictures, that are out there from that show.
There
Really.
is. And sometimes what the
Mhm.
pictures don't always capture is the vibe in the
Mhm.
crowd, the pit, and that sort of thing. What do you remember from shows like that?
Dude, it was just like there was no separation. We used to go to the Cameo and there was like a giant stage, you know what I mean? Like very tall. It was very wide and everything too. But there was just that separation between the audience and the performers. And at places like this, like that one show with Upfront and Release, it was just like, dude, everyone's on top of one another pretty much. And it was just like, cool, let's do this. You know what I mean? We're all together doing this. And it was awesome. It was a great time. People just stage diving, not even, you couldn't stage dive, we just roll on top of people. And you know what I mean? Like, and that's what I remember the most, just like there was no separation. We're all in this together. Let's have fun.
Right.
And, it was a good time overall. So,
How did your family feel about this is
oh
what
yeah, my
our
parents.
son is into?
Yeah, yeah. Like, yeah, man, like they never had a problem. They're like, what do you want to do? You want to do this? Okay, go ahead and do it. Figure it out. I can support you. What do you need? You need to buy a bass, you need to do whatever. Okay, I can help you with that. But then the rest you got to take care, of your own. I would show my parents my records and stuff like, oh, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like they were supportive. You know what I mean? They weren't like, oh no, you can't do this. Like they were always
Right.
supportive of anything I wanted to do. They're like,
That's
like
good.
we can give you some like support here, monetarily or this or whatever. But then the rest you got to figure it out on your own, like some it was always like supportive,
At
so
this point,
mhm.
considering that they were supportive of you, did
Yeah, yeah.
you upgrade your bass or are you still playing the same bass?
I think I was playing the same bass. You know what I mean? It was kind of like I forget. It was a Palmer, I think.
Okay.
Bass, and it was okay. You know what I mean? Like, I think I got a new one once. Once I started Cavity, I got a new one. Like a Fender Precision. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So I was using the same one. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just it does the job. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't have to have like 20 um, bass guitars or whatever,
Sure.
which I know some people, guitar players mainly, they're just to get like three or four for different sounds and everything, which is cool, like
Right.
nothing against that. But for me, it's just like, I got to do this and I got to write my songs. I can definitely do it with this bass. Let's just keep going. You know what I
I think
mean?
it's
So,
always cool when you've used the same instrument on multiple projects that you can
yeah,
look back on that as being just as much a part of the history as the music itself.
right, right. Yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, so we're talking about Powerhouse. Yeah, I was in Powerhouse for a very short time. Um, and then, like I think I left and then Scott left too. And then Andy stuck with them and they got another bass player from Beyond Reason, actually, I think. Another, local Miami band.
Absolutely.
I think they got the bass player from that band to play with them and they played for a little bit more. They changed the sound, but I wasn't aware really. I was just like, it was a new time. It was at the end of the 80s, um, and like all the youth crew bands that were breaking up, you know what I mean? There was just like a new something in the air, um, the new places were popping up too, like venues at the beach, for example, the junkyard, you know what I mean, the trash can, um, Washington Square, and then like Uncle Sam's, we played a show there too with Cavity later on, but Uncle Sam's was doing shows too.
Right.
So there were like a bunch of like new spots, and I didn't have a band, like I wanted to be in a band, and it's just like it's just so hard, man. Like when you have a band and everything's working and then boom, everything just stops and you want to keep playing music to start from scratch. It's like so hard sometimes. You know what I mean? So I was just like listening to music. And like I said, there was like I knew something in the air too. You know what I mean? All those youth group bands broke up and there was like a whole new scene too, like in New York, because we were listening to a lot of bands. I was listening to a lot of bands from New York, you know what I mean? Uh, like Breakdown, the New Breed comp. I don't know if you're familiar with that comp, like a bunch of different bands,
Right.
which I was kind of like into some of them, you know. But then right
And that
after,
was one of the few ways, though, that you could discover these bands was through these
yeah,
compilations.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And just reading like fanzines and stuff like that.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Which
Like,
the fanzine's great, but it's just words on paper,
I know,
right?
just words on
The
paper. Yeah, yeah.
compilations really give you
I know.
the vibe of
The
what's
vibe,
really
man.
going on in those
Yeah,
scenes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but it wasn't like what I wanted to hear, really. You know what I mean? Like it was interesting stuff, I mean, that was current, but it wasn't like what I wanted to. And then like the whole ABC No Rio scene just popped up and I could identify with that. And then Gilman Street Project, you know what I mean? Those new bands over there too, the same vibe, you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, I can, I can get into this. Do you know what I mean? That kind of like raw, dirty sound, you know what I mean? It wasn't polished. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
Against, Citizens Arrest. Do you know what I mean? Like bands like that were like, dude, this is cool. And then like some other bands, I don't want to say mainstream, but like touch and go bands. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like the Laughing Hyenas, which came out of Negative Approach. You know what I mean? Like Hole and all those bands. You know, kind of like
Right.
grungy bands. You know, like a new way of looking at music in a way. You know, at least for me. You know, so
And I did read how influential a band like Laughing Hyenas was to you. What was it about that band that just connected with you?
bass playing, their bass player,
A lot of
Kevin
those
Monroe.
bands like that, the
Yeah.
bass was such a intricate part of
Yes.
their
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah, Kevin Monroe. Okay, Kevin Monroe, like great bass player, man. Like, you know, like, and it was just like those bands. I mean, like the Laughing Hyenas is very influenced by the Birthday Party, which was like Nick Cave's first band, and that's also very bass heavy. You know what I mean? Like the bass drives everything, and I was just like, I can get into that, man. You know, because that's what I play. That's what you know. So, so that was a big thing. You know what I mean? For us to like, for me to mold that new sound I wanted to make, you know, like that, you know, that Born Against and Laughing Hyenas and kind of dirty and just like lots of feedback, Velvet Underground, you know what I mean, type stuff, you know. So it was a total break from the things that I had done in the past. And I'm like, this is it. This is cool. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
want to try something new, you know, to be like just unrefined in some way. You know what I
sure.
mean? Like, and just abrasive and just like just, you know,
Right.
making all those sounds. It was cool. I mean, I was discovering new things and meeting people who were into that stuff too. You know what I mean? Like,
True.
so if you want me to keep going with like other bands, you know what I mean? Like, it really, a really pivotal band for me was Killer Kane. Have you heard of that band?
Through you.
Through me. I know. So, yeah, man, like it was okay. So Killer Kane was comprised of myself, Buddha, Brian Bush. You've heard of him. He played in Chickenhead and bands like that,
Of
and
course.
many other bands, you know, like him. This guy called Giovanni. He was a big staple in the scene. You know what I mean? He was go to all the shows. You know what I mean? Like, so Gio was in the band. Uh, and David Font. He sang for the band, and he sounded just like Sam McPheeters pretty much. He used to write to them, you know, and to like Sam and those guys. He was friends with them. So he introduced me to a bunch of bands. You know, he introduced me to the Melvins, for example. You know what I mean? I was just like, dude,
So
what is this?
that's where that comes into play.
That comes in too through David. Yeah, you know, like at the birthday party and people like that. Do you know what I mean? Like through David. And then we had Ronnie. Ronnie was Fausto's cousin, and he plays drums just like Fausto, like that open and stuff. And it
Interesting.
was a five piece, you know. And but Ronnie passed away, you know what I mean? Like he was after you know Andrew, you know what I mean? Like a bunch of people came over to help. And I don't know if you heard of this, you know, like a National Guardsman murdered three people. You know, he hooked up with, you know, like Ronnie and two other people, a girl called, I think Gina. She was close to the Load people, and
Okay.
another person that just met up at a bar, you know what I mean, started drinking. They took this guy somewhere, and then at the next day, they found all three of them murdered by FIU. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
Ronnie, he played in the band, and then after the band broke up, you know, like that happened to Ronnie. You know, like really cool guy. You know, he lived close to my house. I used to go to his house all the time. We listened to music. You know, I would show him songs. But yeah, Killer Kane lasted possibly I don't know, man, like 4 months. You know,
I know he said 4 months last go around, but
I know.
in punk years, 4 months is kind of a long
It's a long
time.
time. I know. Yeah, yeah. And we used to practice at a place in Miami Beach, actually, like right on Fifth and in Washington, Fifth and Washington. Do you know what I mean? Like there was the gym, you know, the famous gym with like, you know, Muhammad Ali like had boxed and met the Beatles or whatever. Right across the street from it, there was like a little like I think it was an art gallery type place, but it was closed. And David knew the owner of that place. So we used to go practice there, you know, in Miami Beach. We wrote like, I don't know, 7 songs or something like that. And we sounded just kind of like born against in a way.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like Davis sounded just like Sam, you know, like, you know, in his own way, but he had that vibe. Um, and even Cavity, we cover one of those songs later on, one, you know, a Killer Kane song. But I like the name. David came up with it. And I think we played maybe one show. I think there are flyers for 2 shows, but we played one.
Okay.
because the other show got canceled or something happened at Churchill's and we just couldn't play the show. Somebody didn't show up or something like that. But we had a bunch of practices. We did record a live session at some place in Broward somewhere.
Is
But
that the
mhm.
demo type tape
The
that you
one, the
have?
one thing that I sent you, yeah,
Okay.
that is, yeah. Actually, there are two sessions, yeah, and they're both live in the studio. You know what I mean? Just like a practice space where they had like a soundboard. We told them to pop a tape in and recorded it. And they did record it, and but that was a really good band, man. It was just like eye-opening, like, and we had like Brian, Buddha doing a bunch of new things on guitar, you know what I mean? And we had two guitar players, and he was like the lead player. And I was just like, this is cool, man. Like, I like this whole vibe. So,
Remember where the other show was at?
okay, we had a show. I think hold on, see the flyers.
Because I know there was one that was at Churchill's, but you said that one
Yeah, I don't think that
didn't
happened. And
happen.
then, yeah, yeah. And then let me see.
And that one says the first show. So,
Right, right, okay. Um, I know we were supposed to do a punk picnic actually with Chickenhead.
okay.
Chickenhead was already happening back then. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I met Chuck back in the late 80s, from different shows and things. Met him, and also through David. David Font was a big, like, uh, person who connected us to like a lot of people. Omar Angulo, another artist, he did the AAA artwork. He's a guy from Kendall that,
absolutely.
I've known for a long time, you know what I mean? So we all came from that crowd, and we identified with that ABC No Rio vibe, you know what I mean? Like, um, which was like, I don't know, if you look at the ABC No Rio bands or whatever, that scene, it's just like a bunch of kids. There's no like mohawks, there's no leather jackets, it's just a bunch of kids,
Right.
just regular people, you know what I mean? And
I feel
that's
like
what we,
that's how a lot of the other scenes were in like DC, Chicago. They were
yeah,
just like regular
people.
people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There wasn't like a uniform you had to put on.
Correct.
We belong to this tribe or whatever.
Right.
So like we really like that. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like the whole vibe too. Uh,
totally.
so through Killer Kane, like met a bunch of people, like I was saying. But yeah, there were two shows. Punk Picnic, I don't know. I don't, like looking back and trying to remember, I don't think we played those two shows. There were flyers, but
Yeah,
we got to play them, like, for some reason. Um, but yeah, it was a really good band, and like while it lasted, for what we did, it was just, like very eye-opening for me. I don't even
right.
know why we broke up, like well, I think we broke up and then a little bit after that's when that thing happened to Ronnie. Um, but I don't know, we just wanted to do new things, like and we were looking for that new thing. And I think that sound, that came out of ABC No Rio and then like Gilman Street Project and
Sure.
those like newer scenes were given that to us. And it was
Yeah,
very inspiring, like
absolutely. And
so.
with, I
Mhm.
also want to go back to Chickenhead for a minute
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah, sure.
thinking back in that time period,
Right.
especially in South Florida,
Hmm.
I don't really know any other bands that sounded like Chickenhead. What
Right.
did you think of them back then?
I think it was cool. It was just like, we know these people, and like, dude, I used to hang out with anybody. I would just go to a bunch of shows, and I would just meet people. You know what I mean? It's just like I met Chuck, I met Erica, Scott Baldwin. He played with them, which I've known him for years. You know what I mean? Like, so
Right.
he was there too. So it was like a new thing. You know what I mean? Like, and they were just very unpredictable. You know what I mean? And I did one show with them. I practiced twice with them, and we played a show at Churchill's. Actually, it was myself playing bass, and then Joey from Dead and Gone, who was in Blatz, and like also in the past, he came down and he was just hanging out, and they're like, like Chuck's like, oh, we got a show, so you guys want to play? Sure, so we practiced at my house, actually, my mom's house. We practiced, like myself, Erica, and Joey. We practiced, and then we're like, okay, and me and Joey were like, I think we got this, like so. And then we played the show. The show lasted 10 minutes probably.
Do
We didn't get to play all the songs, but I can say that I played with Chickenhead one time.
you
So
remember why you didn't get the chance to play all the songs?
I don't know. I mean, I think just Chuck ran off or something. Like, okay, this is it, like, or like a cord got broken or something like
Right.
that. There was some kind of like mishap. So,
Was that
so
the first time though you played Churchill's?
no, 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 no. I have
Okay.
played Churchills before. Yeah, yeah. Well, we tried to play with Killer Kane.
Right. But you
Yeah,
said
yeah, yeah.
that one didn't happen.
It
So
didn't happen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
yeah.
no. Uh, After Killer Kane, I started crawl. I mean, the show with Chickenhead, it was later on.
Oh, that came
You know,
later. Okay.
came later. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
it came
gotcha.
later. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you had
So
already played, and we'll
yeah,
get, yeah, I'm sure
yeah,
we'll
yeah. I
explore
was
more
like
of that.
a
So,
seasoned player at Churchill, so
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
right.
So yeah, so we can talk about that, like the change. You know what I mean? Like with Killer Kane, like there were a bunch of places popping up. Like I said, the Junkyard. You know what I mean? Uncle Sam's, Washington Square. I did see Godflesh at the Junkyard. That was just, you know what I mean? Minds were blown. You know, with that drum machine just like pounding into your
Yeah.
chest. You know what I mean? Like, and then like somebody poured beer on the drum machine and just that was the end of the show. um,
Now, did a band like Godflesh,
mhm.
didn't they have influences like more like industrial kind of
Yeah,
music?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, yeah. Industrial, very industrial. Do you know what I mean? And like
Right.
guitar heavy too. You know what I mean? Like, but it was mainly that drum machine that drove that sound. You know, like some effects on the vocals, I guess. You know what I mean? But
Sure.
the whole combination, it's a two piece. You know what I mean?
Right.
Bass guitars and a drum machine. It was just so powerful. You know, like so that was another band that we were listening to. You know, at that point, Laughing Hyenas, Godflesh, Melvins. Born Against and the whole crowd, you know, more Black Flag, whatever, you know what I mean? Like some, it was just like building something in my head. Like there were all these routes that I can go into, you know, birthday party, do you know what I mean? To like a
What
right.
about a band like Ministry? Were you into them?
No, not really. You know,
Okay.
that whole wax tracks thing, it was more, to me, it sounded more like dance music. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
And we had nights like that at the
Yeah.
camp, whatever, you know, like, or some, there was a place in Kendall too, the Kitchen Club or something. I forget, you know,
Yeah, the
like,
Kitchen Club.
the Kitchen Club, yeah, it was more that sounded to me. It wasn't. I don't know. I like a lot of effects and stuff. You know what I mean? It's just sounded like prepackaged in so many ways. You know what I mean? So I wasn't into that. I
Okay.
wasn't into that. You know, but I mean, Godflesh had some of that. You know, but it was raw. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just like abrasive. You know what I mean? Much more
Right.
like Ministry, I would say, in my
Sure.
opinion. So.
That makes sense. Did you know at places
Mhm.
like the Junkyard and the Thrash Can that people like Rabbi were booking bands to play those
Yeah, yeah,
shows?
yeah. No, we knew Rabbi. He was booking shows. You know what I
Right.
mean? But like I said, I had the band, you know, Killer Kane, and then we just stopped. You know, and then there was a period. You know, I wanted to play music, and I was just going to shows mainly. You know, just talking to people about starting a band. Um, but nothing was happening really. You know, like but yeah, we knew about Rabbi booking shows there. He was booking shows at Churchill's. You know, and then Churchill's appeared. You know what I mean? And we used to go to shows there. Like a lot of shows started happening there. You know. And then I was like, I got to get a band together, you know, like um, so yeah, if we're talking about South Florida, you know, history,
Right.
Church was kind of like took the lead, you know what I mean, and just booking lots and lots of shows and being like open to like any type of show you want to do. Hey, Tuesday night, whatever, any night, you know, let's try to do it. You know what I mean? So that was good. So then we can get to, you know, Killer Kane ended. And like I said, I was just looking for something else. And I met Renee Barge, you know, singer of Cavity, at a
Right.
Fugazi show at the Cameo.
Okay.
I was just hanging out and, you
Was
know,
that the
like
same show that the Believers opened up for?
it might be.
Okay.
It might be. I think it was the first time I saw Fugazi play in Florida, you know, like, um, and I went to a 7-Eleven on the way out from the beach and I see this guy and I was like, oh, you were at the show and you know this person and that person. It's like, yeah, what's up, dude? What's your name? Oh, Renee. It's like, oh, what's happening? You know, so like we had seen the show. Um, and then how we, you know, we started hanging out because Renee used to, he used to work at Y&T Records, you know. And if you want to talk about some record stores, you know what I mean? Because we mentioned that too, like, you know,
Right.
history, you know, like, um,
That's a great sidebar though to just talk
yeah,
about
yeah, just stop
Y&T
talking about
because
bands for a second. Yeah, yeah.
right, because Y&T was no stranger to a lot of
Mhm.
in-store performances from bands in the
Yes.
area. So
Right.
talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'll tell you about like when I first got to this, you know, to Miami, you know, like and I moved to my house, which was um like 42nd and 8th Street, you know what I mean? Like right behind Abraham, this big like um auto place or whatever, you know, like I live right behind it. Um Myself and my brother, man, like we used to ride our bikes to Specs Music. I don't know if you know where that is. That's pretty far away. It's on US 1 and 57th. Do you know what I mean? So we used to ride our
Yeah.
bikes from like 42nd and 8th, just
That's a
like
that's a trek.
it's a trek, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, they have specs, they have a bunch of records we can go there. And that was early on when I first moved to Miami, you know what I
Right.
mean? So we used to go there and just try to find records all the time, you know what I mean? And then we found that place. It was on Coral Way, actually, closer to my house. You know what I mean? So we used to ride our bikes there and get some records, but then that place closed. I don't even know what the name of that place was. So those were the two places that I first went to like get records, you know what I mean, vinyl and stuff like that. And then we heard about Y&T, like, and I mean, the first location I went to was the one on 57th and Bird, you know what I mean? That big
Right.
one, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Right.
And that's how I started meeting people, like, but this was like early 90s.
Sure.
Renee used to work there. This girl, Mary, used to work there too. Tracy, um, let's see, Justin, this tall kid, really cool. He worked there too. So, you know what I mean? Like, it was a place to go hang out most of the time. You know what I mean? Like, we can buy records, look at fanzines and everything else, but it was a place to just, it's like a meeting point. Okay, from here, we'll go somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, we'll go to the Cameo, go to another show, whatever, or just go hang out, have a party, whatever. Um, but it was a meeting point, like, and then yeah, they used to have some, in stores, which is cool. Seeing more live music, it's just like a thing. We have to go and just see more live music, you know what I mean? Because there's so much out there, like, um, so yeah, at Y&T, I probably met Priya and Robert from KLS there, you know what I mean? Like, um, and then going to Churchill's too.
Right.
But that's just a bunch of people you would get to, somebody's picking up a record. They're like, oh, you like that? Oh, that's cool. Me too. What do you do? You know what I mean? Like great meeting places, which we don't have now, at least in Florida, so much anymore. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Right.
everything's online and fine, but um, it was cool, man, just like having the time to just go and hang out, just to waste time and just meeting new people, talking about music all day, you know what I mean? Like, so Y&T was really cool, man. It just opened up a lot of, they used to just get like a lot of 7 inches, that you would never think they would get, but they would get them because of Mary and Renee and people like that, just order things in. So I got to buy a bunch of records there, so that was a really good place to go to, it's a really like I said, a meeting point, and it's just like a good like meeting place for like diverse people, you know what I
Totally.
mean?
Yeah.
Goth people, hardcore people, skinheads, punk
Right.
rock, whoever, everybody went there,
It
so
was becoming this community of what was
yes,
going on, no matter what sub scene you were a part of.
right, right.
The main scene connected at places like that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's another
Yeah.
thing. I was talking to Chuck about it recently, and we're like, because like people from outside Florida, they think like, oh, Cavity, you got to play with bands just like that all the time. And we're like, no, man, there was just like one or two places to play, and everybody who was a band played there too. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like, well, we're gonna choose only like the hard, heavy bands to play with. It's like that
Right.
doesn't happen. You get to play with whoever. You
I
know what
would
I mean?
say it was almost the opposite of that.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just, I think it was great. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you got to meet different people, seeing different bands. You know what I mean? Like, all that was really cool. You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to being just in a box and playing with those bands all the time. The bands you sounded like, which is, it's not interesting. And as you can see from the flyers that I put out with Cavity, you can see all the bands that we play with, a very diverse group of people we got to play with,
Absolutely.
in Florida, definitely, and, you forge these friendships, like I still stay in touch with Chuck, Priya and Robert, from KLS. I forget other people, you know what I mean? But just people from back
Sure.
then that we met during that time, so.
Absolutely. There's so many people who've
Mhm.
crossed your path on this journey, right? And you
Yeah.
mentioned Robert and Priya, who were also
Right.
guests on the podcast to
Mhm.
talk about KLS, Cream Electric Santa. And I know you mentioned you met them one of the
Mhm.
first times at Y&T, but you
Probably.
also connected with them at Churchill's too. Was
Yes.
that with Crawl for the first time?
No, no, I was just by going to a show.
Okay,
I
so
do
going
remember
to a
like
show.
they were sitting by, they were just, it was late at night, you know what I mean? People were just hanging out, bands finished playing, and there were like these people, a few of them, you know what I mean, sitting um, right around where the door is, you know what I mean? Just sitting there, just killing time, like, and I think I almost tripped on like, I don't know, robber or something, you know what I mean? Like his legs were like extended or something. It's like, oh, I almost tripped on that. It's like, oh, hey, it's like, oh, what's up, man? You know, it's like, not in a bad way. It's like, oh, my name is Dan. What's your name? Whatever. You know what I mean? So we started talking. And that's how I met them pretty much. I think they were just hanging out like outside of Churchill.
Yeah.
And we just started talking. Yeah, we play in a band. Oh, really cool. You know, playing a band too. I did play. And then we just kept seeing each other at different places.
Was that during the prom sluts era?
I think it was KLS already. I
KLS
don't think I've
already.
ever got to see that band. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I think it was mainly like KLS. It was their new thing, you know, like some, and again, like I was new to Churchill's. Do you know what I mean? Like they had been to Churchill's before, you know, like all these bands you mentioned, you know, that they had been in.
Right.
Like we played Churchill's before, you know, but it wasn't in our radar to go to Churchill's yet,
Because
you
the
know.
first show at Churchill's was
Mm.
the Prom Sluts and
So,
Broken Talent.
there you go. Yeah. I was thinking about that band too, Broken Talent, the other day. I think I saw like in that Thinking Cap fanzine, there was like an ad for them and a bunch of other bands that I forget their names now. I know, but they were on the same label selling cassettes, you know, Broken Talent, blah, blah, blah. And I was trying to remember that, you know, to mention it. But yeah, no, that was another crew of people that we had no knowledge of. You know what I mean? Because I don't think they came from hardcore or punk music. You know what I mean? It was more like experimental. You know what I
Yeah, they
mean?
were kind of flipper-esque.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
know, like some, it was just like another vibe. You know that
Right.
we weren't aware of. You know,
Sure.
so
Sure.
uh,
Absolutely.
so we
And
got
this scene was changing too. Once the
yes,
90s started to really forge ahead, all
yeah,
these newer bands started coming around,
right.
and you, of course, being a part of that as well. So,
Mm.
what was the next project for you? Was it Crawl? Was that the
Yes, it
next
was.
band?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was, you know, it was Cavity in a nutshell. You know what I mean? It was like the beginnings of Cavity. You know, we just came up with that name, and it was myself and Renee, and then Raph from the Crumbs. He played guitar for us, who we met at a show too. You know what I mean? We're like talking and stuff too, but so I played. I had seen him before too. He used to go to the Cameo. He used to go to the Cameo, and you know, he was kind of like a skinhead in a way, you know, short hair and stuff, like suspenders, I think, you know what I mean? But he had that look, Doc Martens and everything, you know what I mean? Back when the Cameo was like, you know, the thing. Like I did see him a few times over there, and then we met up again at some place, and I said, "Dude, hey, I remember you," and we started talking. So it was myself, Renee, Raph, and then this kid Joey. Joey, he played drums. Um, Not Joey from Dead and Gone, just Joey from Miami, you know. And I don't even know how he came into the fold. I think he was friends with Geo from Killer Kane. They lived nearby, they knew each other. And I think I asked Geo, hey, I'm looking for a drummer. He's like, oh, my friend Joey plays drums. It's like, oh, yeah, let's try him out, you know, like, so, okay. So I went to try him out, you know, and Geo wasn't playing with me, you know, like, so Joey, he plays drums like John Bonham in a way. You know what I mean? So we started like doing these riffs and we're like, okay, that's cool. You know, it's just something new. It wasn't like the standard stuff. It was like more laid back. You know what I mean? Like, so like, you know, I got my thinking cap on or whatever, you know what I mean? And see like, hey, I can do these riffs. You know what I mean? They could be slower, you know? And we got that rolling, you know? So like, so we did a demo with Crawl, actually. We recorded it at Renee. His dad is an engineer. He had a little studio at their house, and that's where we did it. You know, it's like a few, I think it's like 4 to 5 songs or maybe more. Um, it sounds kind of like I don't know. I would say kind of grungy in a way. I guess it's kind of
Okay.
clean, the sound. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of clean, but we got to do things what we wanted to do. You know, like I'm not sure if like Renee's dad like knew what we wanted. You know what I mean entirely, but he gave us something. You know, like we got to like write songs in this manner and everything. So that got started,
What
and
was
then
Renee listening to at this time? Do you remember?
a lot of like touch and go stuff. You know what I mean? He likes wax track stuff. You know what I mean? He used to work at what's the name of that place? At the Bakery Center back in the day. Have you heard of that place, the Bakery Center?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. He used to work there at this fashion place. You know what I mean? Like, well, whatever. They sold like, you know, leather stuff and like more
Sure.
alternative stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he used to work there. So like, I think his upbringing was more like I would say new wave-ish in a way. You know what I mean? Because of where he worked and everything and people he had got to hang out with. You know what I mean? But then we clicked on like, Black Flag Fugazi and like Born Against and things like that. You know what I mean? So we clicked on that a lot.
Right.
Godflesh. Um, so he knew like what I wanted. I had shown him Killer Kane too, and I said, look, I come from this, from this band. And he's like, yeah, I like that. And we can do something like this too, or even, we can go beyond this. I said,
Right.
cool, man. Yeah, let's do it. Um, so we got together and did that demo. And then we listened to the demo. And we're like, I think we can just, do you know what I mean? Get this to be like a little bit dirtier, like and just slower and things like that. Um, so
You were right, by the way.
yeah, yeah, we got to do it. Yeah, we got to do that. Yeah,
You did.
finally we got to do it. So yeah, in like the first lineup, at least for our 7-inch, it's the same lineup as the Crawl demo. Same lineup. Um, so what person came into the fold then? Oh, Dennis. I mentioned that guy, Dennis Munoz. He went to my high school. He played in Anchor, and we used to practice at his. He had a place in I think it was in Hialeah or something. He had like a practice spot, and we used to go there. You know what I mean? And then at one point, we're like, "Hey, man, we want to record something. Can you help us out?" And he's like, "Sure." Like I help you out. And I think like our first 7-inch, man, was recorded to like I don't think it was even like I think it was a 4-track or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Something very primitive. And that's how the first 7-inch got done at his space with some very primitive equipment. That was the first 7-inch that we actually got together for Cavity. We changed the
Okay.
name because there was another band from um, the Northwest with the same name. So we're like, oh, we got to find a new name. And myself and Renee were like, just that one word name, which would be perfect. If we can find something. And we're like, oh, I think we both said, well, Cavity. It's like, okay, that's it. Fine. Let's
Do you
go with
know
that.
do you know though why Cavity was
No
the
clue, man. It
choice?
just sounded good. It just sounded good. You know
It
what I mean?
does. I mean, it definitely has.
Yeah.
When you look at the word just on paper, but then you
Yeah.
listen to the vibe of
Right.
the band
Yeah. Yeah.
Cavity,
Mhm.
you get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we said, that clicks. Cool. Let's do it.
Right.
Like, so we went with that, and we were starting to play shows, we played Churchill a couple of times, like some, I'm just trying to put everything together because it's one thing and then the
Oh,
local stuff,
absolutely.
which that's what we're here for, to talk about the local stuff. Um,
Was it the Scalpel 7-inch though? Was that the first one that
Yeah,
your
yeah.
band
That
ever
was
released?
like our
Okay.
second demo. You know what I mean? Well, our first demo was Cavity, right? But it was done
Right.
at Dennis's place, with a boombox or something, or just a 4-track, something like that. And then we mixed it, and then that was the first 7-inch, which Amo from Four and a Half Fingers put out. And we
Right.
had known him too from like back in like the Powerhouse days, or maybe something like that around that time, maybe, because he knew Scott Baldwin. Um, so he was around, and then he came up with the label and everything. Um,
Were you
yeah.
aware of other bands on the Four and a Half Fingers label too?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we
Okay.
knew Chickenhead. That was the whole thing, man. Like the punk picnics. You know what I mean?
Right.
That used to happen every now and then, like out in Kendall and like in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, Chuck would say, "You guys want to play?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's go play, man. It's a show, let's go play." And like, I knew Chuck, like we got along well and everything, even back then. So he's like, "Yeah, dude, come and play." So we used to go there and play. Those Canadians would play, you know what I mean? Like a bunch of bands from that crowd would play. So we got to meet a bunch of people, and then like, just because I don't think Amo had like an identity for his label. Do you know what I mean? They were just his friends. It's like, oh, I like your stuff. I like to put it out. Let's put it out. So yeah, we knew Chickenhead, those Canadians, because I knew Scott also, Scott Baldwin. He was in that band, he was in Powerhouse with me. You know what I mean? Like, so there were ties all over the place, and people who stuck around because they were more than just, going to a show and just watching a show. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just productive people of the scene, so. Um, so yeah, the 7-inch came out. We, started playing shows, and this was like early 90s. Like
Sure.
Cavity started in 92, I think. 92. Oh, and I want to mention one more person, man. Like there was a guy called Carlos Mesa. He played guitar in Crawl, actually, in the very, very beginning. And he was a friend of David Font from Killer Kane. So Carlos was a writer, basically. He wrote stories and everything, and he used to put them out in different zines. Um, but we got together with him, and he had like another vibe, you know what I mean? So we got together with him, Joey, Renee, and we had a couple practices, but it just wasn't working. It wasn't like, I mean, he was more into like the Velvet Underground and people like that, and wanted to do like just feedback and noise, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, and but that wasn't everything that we wanted to do, And then we got to meet Raf, and he joined too. So Carlos, left the fold basically. You know what I mean? Like, but he was another good person to meet because he introduced us to a lot of people. Like, he introduced me to like the Stooges, for example. You know what I mean? And the Velvets and people like that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Um, so he was a good connection to have, and he was around.
Absolutely.
He would go to shows and everything too. But then he just kind of disappeared. I'm not sure where he's at now, but another person, in my long history who like,
Right. But
you
it's important that these people who come into our lives for whatever reason and however long of time it is,
yeah,
they leave that mark in some way that we can even still
yes,
carry with us to this very day.
right, right, right. So like, like I got exposed, to a
Right.
bunch of bands through him,
Absolutely.
so it was good, so anyway, Crawl Cavity. So this was 1992. We had the lineup of like Joey, myself, Renee, and Raf, and then we wanted to go on tour, but Joey wasn't into going on tour. I think that was the main thing as to why he left, you know. So then, like we knew people around town. We knew Jason Letterman from Machine, and he played Beyond Reason too. We knew him, and
Right.
we're like, "Hey, Jason, would you want to play?" He's like, "Yeah, dude, I'll play." Um, so he played with us. He started playing with us. And then also we got another guitar player. We had Raf, and then we got John Bonanno, who played in the Crumbs later on. John's like one of my best friends. Also, I've known him forever. Great guitar player. Also, I think I played with like some really good guitar players throughout my life. You know what I mean? That would say like these guys are amazing. John's up there too, but these really good guitar players. So we added John to the fold. So we're a five-piece now, and this is 1993. And again, like a lot of bands are going on tour. We have to go on tour. Let's just do a short tour up north. You know what I mean? And we did. We went up the East Coast. We went up to, I don't remember all the shows that we played. You know what I mean? Like we did play New Jersey somewhere. We played ABC No Rio, uh, and a couple of other spots. I think like the top place that we played at on that tour was probably like New York City. And then we came back. You know what I mean? A few places. Oh, we played Philadelphia. And
Okay.
that was one show. And yeah,
What were the crowds like for some of those Northeast shows?
they were receptive. You know what I mean? Like, and they were into that sound. Like I said, there was a whole new thing with the whole like, I want to say that ABC No Rio sound. You know what I mean? Like, but just kids looking for a new sound. You know what I mean? That wasn't like codified as like just punk or just this or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so we had some pretty good crowds. The Philly show, uh, it's a whole story about that show. You know what I mean? But like, we had a good response to that show. Like, it's
Was
just
there
like a
was
weird.
there a lot of violence or
No,
something?
no, it was just a
Okay.
weird place, man. Like that we
Okay.
played at. It was just odd. You know what I mean? Like the door to the bathroom was like right next to the stage, and there was no door, to the bathroom. It was like, and then it's just that, and just like,
Yeah.
just like a bunch of like freaks or whatever. And then there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like, but
Did you get distracted while you were playing?
a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, what the hell is going on here? Uh,
Right.
but that was a good show. It was a good show overall. You know what I mean? Like good memories from that show.
Yeah.
And we played ABC. We played ABC No Rio. We played Reconstruction Records, which was some people from ABC No Rio. It was Charles Maggio from Rorschach. He had opened up this store in New York City also, and we played there. That was a really cool show. We got some pictures out of that. ABC No Rio, like I said. We went to CB's, like during that tour, we went to CB's. We didn't play. We got to see the Unsane for free. We heard that they were playing at this one place, and we just went to the back door. We just knocked on the door, and some guy opened, yeah, come in. It's like we just walked in and saw the Unsane for free,
Okay.
you know, during this one trip. Um,
What was it
so
like being in a place like CBGB's just to see a show?
it was cool, man. Like it was just like, you know what I mean? Like you read about it, you see the pictures and everything. You're like, whoa, this is it. Huh. Like even just going to the door, it's like, wow, man, like it's just, I don't know, real life, you touch,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's just like real life is right there. You know what I mean? It's not a
right. Because
photo
to your
anymore.
point, this is a place that seems almost mystic in a way.
Yes, mystical. Yeah, 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 yeah. It did exist, you know what I mean? Like
Of
ABC No
course.
Rio too. We had read so many things about ABC No Rio. And then we're like, oh, we're just walking down into the basement, and that's where we played. And we're like, here's
Right.
that column that's right next to every picture that I've seen. It's like, oh, cool. We put a cavity sticker on it. Um, it's like, oh, this is cool, man. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, we're
And just
like,
thinking about that too,
mm,
Dan,
yeah,
because now the band's name is appearing on more
yeah,
flyers. Now that you're
mm,
touring, stickers, and that sort of thing.
right,
Who was responsible for the styling of the name cavity?
right there. Yeah, I came up with the logo. Like I did a lot of things. You know what I mean?
Right.
But throughout the band's career, we got to work with some big time artists. You know what I mean? Like Posset, Frank Kozik, John Yates. Um, so I got to do a lot of that. And it was out of necessity, basically. You know what I mean? Like when we first started Cavity, we were just like sending demos to everybody. Hey, give us a chance. Like even we got a rejection letter from Jello Biafra. You know what I mean? Like I still have it. And it's like, oh, you should look for another place or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
He rejected you playing at a venue
no, no, no. He rejected us being on his label.
on his label.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm just talking about like, trying to get, I don't want to say signed, but like have someone put out a record. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I got a rejection letter that I can show you later if you want to, from
That's
him.
historical too.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to have. So, but yeah, like, like it was, I don't want to say my band, but like I was a part of it. You know what I mean? I wrote like, I mean, the music, like if we talk about that, like 80% of the music was written by me. You know what I mean? Then other people put guitars on top. And then, we have people like Ryan Weinstein and Anthony, like and Raph, they come up with songs too. You know what I mean? But I would say like the bulk of the opposite, Jason Landrian too, by the way. The bulk of the music from Cavity came out of me, like so.
What
So I
was
would
your
do,
what was your headspace like back then as you're writing a lot of this
mm,
music?
in what sense would
As
you say?
far as like what you're going through personally, what was it
Oh,
like
yeah,
in
yeah,
your
yeah.
life? Because a lot of us are drawing on those experiences, or
Mhm.
maybe we're drawing from a story sense. So what were you
Right,
drawing
right.
from?
Yeah, yeah. For me, it was like, I don't know, first of all, living in Miami, it was a hassle. You know what I mean? Like just, the daily thing with traffic and things like that. So I think that came out in the music a lot too, you know? Um, just, just day-to-day life, I would say. You know what I mean? Like nothing too harsh or whatever. Just like the daily thing with like Miami, even now, you know what I mean? It's just like it's always traffic and like people can't drive, you know what I mean? And blah blah blah
Right.
accidents and things like that, like so I think all of that came out in through the music, but it was also like for me to like experiment. I want to do a sound like this. I want to do a song like this. Because you can see it through like a recorder output. I mean, we have a fast song, a really slow song, another song that does something else, mid-tempo. Do you know what I mean? Like for me, it was a lot of experimentation,
Right.
like songwriting. Um, so um, so in that sense, like I said, it was a place for me to be like, hey, I want to do this. And people read me, you know what I mean? Like it's like, like at Matthews, for example, like I come up with a riff, and it's like, I got it. I know what you're going for. This is it. It's like, yeah, that's it. You know what I mean? Anthony the same, Brian, you know what I mean? Like all these people that I play with, they're kind of like I will come up with something like a skeleton, and they're like, oh, I know what we can do on top of this, you know what I mean? And then
Right.
everything would just like come together. So I'm really glad that I got to play with a bunch of people, very diverse in their playing and everything else.
Sure.
So um
Did you feel like there was a certain point, whether it be a
mm,
7 inch or a full
mhm.
length, where you guys really hit your stride?
I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, because if I look back, like every one of the records that we made probably had like a different lineup. Do you know what I mean? So I got to start over again and again every single time. It wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like Black Flag from this point on, just the same band. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
I always got to play with different music, like Betty playing drums, um, or Anthony playing guitar, or George, another drummer that we had that was really good, or Dan Norris, you know what I mean? Like everybody brought something new to the table. You
Sure.
know what I mean? Like, so I don't think there was a point where we were like, okay, this is it, and that's all that we can do,
Did you feel
you
like the
know?
audience did?
Um, I don't know. I don't think that they did, like, I mean, and again, I don't want to sound like, what I mean, that I'm not concerned with what they like, you know what I mean? But like, I think like they always came back, like, I mean, I
Right.
heard it from Scott the other day. He's like, oh, they never put out anything bad. Scott from Jogbody the other day,
Right.
like he said, oh, I don't think they ever put out anything that was bad. You know what I mean? Everything was good, like, so I think people came back, even though like we had a different lineup or a different sound somewhat, what I mean? People came back and were like, okay, cool, I like this, like,
Yeah.
I mean, some people might have gotten stuck in one period, but like overall, I think people still came back and they were like, this is interesting. Like I don't think they were tired of new things happening or just rehashing older stuff or something like
Right.
that, so
And I feel like too, if you were looking
mm,
for more of a shorter version of some of the songs, the 7 inches could be the way to go.
yeah,
Is that the
right.
direction you guys were going in?
No, I mean, like, what we did? I mean, like, I just wrote songs all the time, like, and that was like somebody told me back in the day too, oh, you gotta stop, like, do these songs and just let them get out there. Yeah, but I would just keep writing more songs on top of the ones we just recorded, So we did sessions. I mean, we had like a session, and then out of that one session, we did like 10 songs. We can do 3 7 inches out of that, like 2 songs here, there, or a comp or something. You know what I mean? Like, so there was always like that need to like document, like this is new. We got new players. Okay, so we're doing that older song in a new way. Let's just record it and see if we can put it out somewhere.
Right.
So, so there wasn't like I was ever dried up with like material. We were never dried up with material. There's always like something new to do. Okay, well, we
Yeah.
gotta go record this.
And I
Like,
love that you did that because it does
mhm,
show
mhm.
the different sounds of the band in that physical format that
Yeah,
not a lot of other bands always had that level of output.
right. Like, and sometimes you see a band and like, you can hear the same sound throughout like many records. You know
Correct.
what I mean? Like, so, and that's something that wasn't, even if we wanted to do that, it wasn't possible. It just wasn't because like new people were in the band.
Right.
You had to show a drummer this song and they played it in a different way. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, we have to adapt to this person now. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So there was just a lot of that. There was just no way that we can keep it the same all throughout. So in that sense, I think it was good,
Yeah.
because we weren't like stagnant with a certain sound. Yeah, we were heavy and just feedbacks and down tuning or whatever, but still there were differences in every record, pretty much.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
as you
Mhm.
mentioned, you
Yeah.
did this first tour where you played
Yes.
the
Mhm.
Northeast, and that's you kind of went up the East Coast, so to speak.
Yeah.
Did you also hit locations throughout Florida in that same period?
We did. We did. I want to tell you a story now. Yeah.
Okay.
From that lineup and stuff too. So yeah, ABC No Rio, great show. Reconstruction, a great show. You know what I mean? So we had a great experience, came back down. We're still playing with as a 5 piece, with John Bonanno, Raph, Jason Letterman, myself, and Renee. We get offered to play a show in Tampa at the Blue Chair, the record store. Which I had gone. I used to like myself and Raph, I met up the guys from Scrog. I don't know if you
Okay.
heard that band.
Absolutely.
I met Bill from Scrog to writing, and he's like, dude, come down. We're playing a show at the Blue Chair. So I used to drive to the Blue Chair a lot, just to hang out with him or other people that I met. I had seen Steve Heritage, you know what I mean, back then too, but I hadn't met him. I hadn't met him yet. Um, so anyway, we get offered to play a show at the Blue Chair with I Hate God and Buzz Oven, the three of us, Cavity, I Hate God, Buzz Oven. We're like, cool, let's do it.
That's a lot of heaviness right there.
Yeah, man, it was cool. So we show up and we're gonna open up the show. Okay, so we do open up the show, right? And within the first 30 seconds of the first song, okay, it's instrumental. You know what I mean? So Renee's kind of like dancing around with the mic and stuff like that. He falls on top of Jason Letterman's drum set and kind of like takes it apart. Jason gets really mad and says, that's it. I'm not playing. I'm not playing with this guy anymore. Forget this, blah, blah, blah. And and gets off stage and hides in a room and in that backstage room, and he just locks the door, doesn't want to come out. And we're like, what? What happened here? We see that Renee kind of fell in the drum set, something happened, Jason got mad, and then just stormed off. We have a show to play. It's been 30 seconds of music, basically. You know what I mean? Like, so we're like, okay, and we try to get Jason to go, no, I'm not going out. I hate this guy, whatever. Not in that sense, but it was just a moment. You know what I mean? Like we all have those moments. You know what I mean? Like so, maybe Jason had too much of like Renee falling on his drums, and he's like, "That's it. I'm not dealing with this anymore." You know what I mean? But we have a show. The show must go on, right? And we keep not Jason, come on, man. So then Jimmy from I Hate God says, "I play drums. I'll play with you guys." Sure. And we're like, okay. So we grab our guitars, we get ready to play. Jimmy's like, one, two, three. At that point, Jason comes over. He's like, hey, puts his hands on his shoulder and says, I got this. I don't know what we would have played, with Jimmy on drums. You know what I mean? We just said,
Right,
okay, let's
because
just keep going.
you didn't really know
No, man,
songs
nothing at
in that
all.
way.
Nothing at all. Nothing. And it was the first time like I had written to the I Hate God guys before I knew their drummer, Joey, but
Sure.
there's a Jimmy, the guitar player, he also plays drums. And so he offered to play, and we're like, okay, sure, let's play. And one, two, three, and then Jason's like, I got this. Okay. Get to the drum set, fixes up whatever, the drum set, and we play this really aggressive, rabid show. I mean, it was amazing. And Jason was just like, ah.
Do you think in a way that almost helped because
Oh yeah,
it
yeah,
was even more
totally.
intense?
It was really intense. You know what I mean? Like, I think at the end we just started making a lot of noise. You know what I mean? It's just like, and we finished the show. But that was one story. Like
Yeah,
from
that's a
the
good
show.
story.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
had Jason on the podcast. For those that haven't checked
yes,
out that
yeah,
episode, that's a fantastic episode with Jason Letterman.
yeah.
And I heard a lot of stories from people,
Mhm.
and it can vary from person to person as far
Right.
as the
Mhm.
crowds in Tampa. What do you remember about that?
Okay, the crowd in Tampa. Well, it's interesting, man. Like, cause I mean, in this sense, I thought it was good. You know what I mean? That everybody just like stuck together, like some like skinheads, wanted to start some trouble or whatever, you know what I mean? And then just everybody just got together and kicked them out. You know what I mean? Like, so that was great. You know what I mean? And they were like very receptive, you know what I mean, to our music. You know what I mean? They were just like responding to it, even though like we had never played there, like,
Right.
so they were good. They were into us and into every band. Pretty much we all kind of sounded similar in some ways, you know what I mean? Heavy. Um, but no, yeah, like I like that, that the whole place united against these people and saying, you need to get out. We don't want you here. We don't want trouble. We're having a good time. You're messing everything up. Get out. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
they kicked him out. Like, I mean, one guy got kicked over the head like a karate kick, and
Oh,
then,
wow.
you know what I mean? Like I said, get out. So, but it wasn't like bloody or nothing. It's just like, you need to leave. You know what I mean? We don't want
Sure.
you, basically, and that was cool. Um, so with Jason, we played Tampa. Um, I don't think we played Gainesville with Jason. You know what I mean? Like I think we came back after that show. Um, and again, he was busy with Machine and a bunch of other bands. He was doing a couple bands. Um,
What'd you think of Machine? Because you did play with them a couple
we did play
times,
with them,
right?
yeah, a few times
Yeah.
actually. Oh, actually, yeah, yeah, we played with them in Assuck and Rorschach, the big show that we did. Yeah, yeah. And Jason was playing two sets. You know what I mean, with us and then them. So it was a little too much. You know what I
It's
mean
a
for him.
lot.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah.
Even for a great drummer like Jason, that's a lot.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So like it was a little too much, and we said, okay, that's cool, man. Like if you want to go and just spend time with them, that's cool. I think it was just like a transitional period for him too, you know, in our band. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
because we never recorded anything with them. We just did one recording actually at WFMU, the radio station up in New Jersey. He plays on that recording, but there was never like a formal recording with Jason.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So we came back and we did a bunch of shows, like while he was still with us and thinking about leaving, we played with Avail, I mean, big show. I think Floor played that show too. Well, no, I think like no one got to play with Avail because like the show got moved from Churchill's to the Machine Warehouse. And I think the only band that played was Avail. because it was just too late. You know what I mean? We had to
Right.
move everybody from Churchill's to like deep down in Kendall or something like that to a warehouse. I think Avail was the only band I got to play. But we did play with like Rorschach and Assuck and Machine a couple shows. I think we played at Respectables with them, and then also at Churchill's.
Was that
You
the
know,
first time you played Respectables?
I think so. I think so. Or there might have been, I think, a festival we had done before with Cavity. With Cavity, some
Right.
kind of like noise fest festival at Respectables.
Because that's the only venue from that
Pretty much
period
from
that's
West Pond.
still alive and
Yeah,
thriving in a
yeah.
way.
Which is down the block from me now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were
Uh,
you aware of what was
mm,
going on? I know you being so far south.
mhm.
Were you aware of some of the other bands that were playing a place like Respectables too around this time?
No, man,
Yeah.
not at all. I mean, like we had our thing, like I mean, we had Churchill's in Miami, and like
Right.
everybody who came through, we knew about that, but beyond that, no, not really.
Yeah.
Like I mean, and like I said, there were those places at the beach. We played at Uncle Sam's one time with Jason, I think. And then another time with Jason at this really like tiny storefront. There was just like a hallway pretty much. And we played at the very back of it, you know what I mean? And people were just lining up to see us. And then at one point we just stopped playing. It was so hot too, you know what I mean? Like, and we're just like, picked up the drums, let's just get out of here, you know what I mean? Like, it's just very chaotic, like, and that's one thing with Cavity. Like, sometimes it was hard to tell what was going to happen, you know what I mean? Doing that one show. You know what I mean? Either through Renan, the drummer, the guitar players, equipment,
Right.
anything. But it was going to be a good night. That's all I knew. Like most of the time, it was a good night.
Yeah.
Most
I
of the
know
time.
this may have come later. I don't know,
Sure, sure.
but there are terms that are used to describe cavity.
Hmm.
Sludge, doom. Were
Right.
those names, were those
Hmm.
vibes being thrown around back then, or did that come later? Were you even aware like what those terms even
That was
meant?
later. That was later. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, we played slow music, kind of like the Melvins, which some people had heard, other people were just discovering, you know what I mean? Myself included, you know what I mean? Like we heard Bullhead and then a 7 inch and I have an 8 inch too, a flexi. And I was like, oh man, this is amazing. But that whole terminology for like sludge, it came later. Like at first it was just like we're playing heavy music, like even like Neurosis, you know what I mean? Heavy music.
Right.
I'll tell you a story about Neurosis. Like um, myself, Raph, I think John Bonanno, Amo Buzzy from Four and a Half, and maybe like two more people. We drove to Gainesville on a Wednesday night, after work. We got out of work and we drove to Gainesville to see Neurosis and Buzz Oven in Gainesville. We drove 6 hours from Miami on a Wednesday night. We're like, yeah, we got to see these guys, man. They're coming to Florida. They're not coming to Miami or
Right.
Broward or whatever. Let's go see them. That was when they put out the Souls of Zero record, that big change, you know what I mean, for them. Dude, we show up to the venue. There's hardly 12 people in the audience. It's New Roses and Buzz Oven.
Wow.
Less Than Jake was playing the same night, so everybody went to that show. And we got to see New Roses just for ourselves. We were like giving them requests, like, oh,
Where
play.
was that at? Do you remember the
Dude,
place?
I don't know the name of the place. There was no stage, but it was kind of like it wasn't a warehouse, you know what I mean? It was just like a formal place. There were like
Right.
curtains behind them, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But there was no stage really, it was just very low, if there was one. And we got to see both of them for the first time right there, right? Like I was in
Yeah.
front of Turk, like playing whatever. And then same with New Roses, like, but this was on a Wednesday. And like I said, like half the audience from that night was like from Miami, basically. We just made the drive to go see New Roses, like so.
I'm
Uh,
sure they're glad that you did because if there
I'm
was
sure,
no one
yeah.
else there,
I know, yeah. And like, oh, they were taking requests. What song do you guys want to hear? Oh,
I
this one.
imagine. Did
Yeah.
they share any like thoughts on the fact that there was hardly anybody at the show?
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, we just
Yeah.
had a good time. It was just like this
Right.
sonic onslaught, pretty much, and just like
Sure.
great, man. You know what I mean? Like it was really good. So, and we got to see them, and like to be kind of like, oh, this new record by New Roses. Oh man, it's so good. Like maybe we can do something like that or whatever. Some kind of vibe. But I know the Florida story. You know what I mean? Like just members of the band just drove up there to see a band and there was no one there, just
Right.
because Les and Jake was playing the same night, so sure everybody went to that show. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so Jason was in the band until then, like we did the tour, WFMU, some shows with like Aslak and Rorschach, and then, he went to do his band full time, so, and that was cool. And then we found this young guy called George. And I don't know how we met him. We had seen him, but and he was just a powerhouse. So good. I mean, he can play like jazzy type stuff and then just get really heavy. You know what I mean? Like, and anything we wanted to do, he can catch on that vibe. Like, oh, let's go quiet.
Right.
And then just heavy. Like he was just right on.
Did
Like,
George make his debut on the Human Abjection record?
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, so I
Which
wish
is
I
a
got,
great record.
yeah, I wish I got right here.
There it is.
But yeah, yeah. So, because I needed to look and see when and how we recorded that record, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we actually recorded it in his living room. This guy called Scott Nixon, who I think played in another band. I don't know what other band, but he played in some local bands. Scott Nixon. I think he might have played in Floor for a little while, I think. But he was friends with Anthony and Steve Brooks.
I think he was in Ed Metusa's Struggle too.
He might have, yeah, yeah, yeah. He was in another local band. I can't remember the name, but he recorded that one record with us, in George's living room.
Yeah.
And then we took it to Jeremy Dubois at Tapeworm and we mixed it over there. But
Was
the
that the
original,
first time you worked with Jeremy?
yeah, yeah, it was the first time, yeah. And let me tell you what, I mean, I think this is going to be a really long episode.
That's
Jeff, that's fine.
perfectly okay. It's the
That's fine.
100th.
Yeah, yeah. So the lineup for the record was Steve Brooks, who we had met, you know what I mean, from doing Floor. Um, and we asked him to play with us. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll play with you guys. Steve played guitar. John Bonanno was playing with us still. George, Renee, and myself, 5 piece. And then Anthony was hanging around too, through Floor. We got to meet him and we used to hang out. And then Anthony did some vocals on this record, like for one song, he did vocals, so we got to meet him. Um, so yeah, Steve played on this record, really cool guy, you know what I mean? Like, and we got to play some shows with Floor, we got to meet Betty, playing drums for them. Um, so it was cool. Like things were changing a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was still hanging out, man. Like I was hanging out with Chuck and Chickenhead and hanging out with new people like from Floor and everything. And I was always around, like I like to go out and just see bands and meet people. KLS, I used to go to their house and hang out all the time. You know what I mean? Like, so I would hang out with anybody. You know what I mean? Like, it just wasn't a thing like, oh, well, these people don't do the type of music I do, so I should hang out,
Right.
so, but the whole, like I said, the denomination sludge or whatever came after, for us, it was just like heavy music, kind of like the Melvins, I guess, you know what I mean?
Right.
And having that whole like Born Against or whatever sound, kind
Yeah.
of dirty and just like unrefined type of sound.
I
So
think also people need to label everything.
true, yeah, yeah. I think you need, to just like, herd everybody into like one, put everybody into one little
Right.
box, but
Right. And it was sludge and doom that
yeah,
seemed to
yeah.
come up most often when you hear Cavity's name.
Yeah, yeah. And also like I think, we got reviewed in a bunch of magazines that were kind of like metal magazines, like throughout the years. So some people say, oh, Cavity is metal. I'm like, nah, I don't think so. I don't agree with that term. You know what I mean? Metal. We have heavy guitars, that's fine, but it's not metal. Like I mean, because
Yeah.
we're not wizards, except for like Juan Montoya, but the others, I mean, we play what we play and we know how to play what we play, but we're not like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like all that type
Yeah.
of,
And
so
just speaking about Juan for a moment,
yeah, yeah.
Pontius Pilate, you all played with too, right?
Yes, we play with them. Who was in that band with him? I forget, but yeah, there were like, there was a new crop of like bands popping up, you know what I mean? Load, Punch Pilot, Postface, they were just around, I don't think that we played much with them. You know, what I mean, I think we did some shows with Load here and
Right.
there.
And
Uh,
Postface was more in Deerfield, so that could be why they may not have been coming down as often, perhaps.
yeah, right, right, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, there were some like Broward bands. We call
Right.
them from
Right.
Broward, whatever. Like some. No, no, but I mean, not to like put them down, but it's like, we weren't in touch with them just because they
Sure.
weren't paid, like some.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and I don't remember any other bands like that. I mean, there was like Los Canadians, what's happening then, Chickenhead, you know what I mean, Harry Pussy.
What do you think of a band like Harry Pussy? Because they were definitely more noisy than a lot of other bands going on at that time
I
too.
mean, I did see them a few times, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, it wasn't my cup of tea. I'm not saying they were bad, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, but it was just something, like I think I saw them 2 to 3 times, and every show was a little bit different. You know what I mean? Like, so that's cool. Like I'm not putting them down. Like
Right.
I think it's, I'm just saying like it wasn't my thing,
You
really.
can't
You know
love
what I mean? Like,
everything. It's just a
yeah,
fact.
yeah, 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 yeah. So like it just wasn't my thing. And like,
Right.
they were tied with like KLS, Cream Electric and
Sure.
Pretty Robert, you know what I mean? Like, and Renee hung out with them too, you know what I mean? Like there were different scenes, like some, but like everybody had a spot pretty much, you know what I mean? Like at Churchill's, like you can always play Churchill's, so it
Right.
could be Harry Pussy, Chickenhead, and Cavity, one show. Oh wow, okay. Three different bands playing the same show, so.
Correct. Absolutely. But like you would play Broward, let's say a venue like Squeeze. What was that
We
experience?
did, yeah, man. Like I think we did what did we do? I don't know. We had problems with like, sound people, like, oh, you gotta turn that down and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Trying to cut you off. Um, but we did play the Slammies at one point, you know what I mean? Like, and I think we came in second to whatever they were doing. We
Right.
weren't interested, we just wanted to play a show. We played the show and then we left. And I think they had the awards or whatever. And like, we don't care about this. You know what I mean? Like, we just wanted to play, to a different crowd,
Did you
like
know Jim Hayward and what he was doing as far as what was happening in Broward at that time?
not much, man, not
Okay.
much. Like I know he was a promoter and all
Right.
that stuff, he was doing a bunch of stuff, and then we were asked, I don't know who asked us to play, and we said, yeah, sure, we'll play. But it wasn't like a punk thing, like, oh yeah, forget you guys. You know what I mean? Like we're playing and then it was just we weren't interested, what I mean? We just wanted to play shows. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like if there was something else besides that afterwards, then so be it. But it wasn't our interest really.
Were there bands though that maybe you were experiencing for the first time, like Rape Tape and Boogalard, Marilyn Manson, those types of
Right, right.
bands?
No, you know what, like we got to play more shows with like bands that had like a punk attitude.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? As opposed to like bands that were just like metal oriented. You
Gotcha.
know what I mean? Like, and even if we were offered something like that, I think we probably would have turned it down. Like, that's not like our vibe, really. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, um, so, so I think that's what I would say about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
Like,
a show like the Slammies, it was quite
yeah,
a mix of
yes, yeah, it was, yeah.
different styles of music.
Right, right, right. And I think it veered more towards like, like more like metal stuff in a way. Like I
Sure.
think there were more metal bands than anything else. But we said, yeah, let's play it. Why not? Like
Yeah,
so a big audience, it's cool.
absolutely. Sure.
So, but yeah, go ahead.
I think the first one, if I'm not mistaken, could have been at the Edge
Okay.
in Broward. Do you
We never
remember?
played the Edge. Yeah.
Never played the Edge, so maybe it wasn't
Mm,
the first one. It could have been one of the others that
mm,
happened. So
okay.
yeah, I know there
Yeah.
was quite a few of them. And
Yeah, yeah.
as far as
Mm.
radio 2 at this time, I
Right.
know Cavity may not have been on
Right.
mainstream radio, but
Sure, sure.
there were always these
Mm.
pirate type shows going on and more underground, style. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
for one of the first times I ever heard Cavity on the radio was on Piper High School Radio in
Okay.
Broward. It wasn't in
Okay.
Miami.
Okay.
And
Mm.
did you were you aware that there
No.
was radio that was playing you guys?
No, man, not really. I mean, like, I had gone to like WVUM at UM, when I was younger, when I was in I think Powerhouse, we went there a couple of times just to hang out. But I knew they existed, what I mean? But like I had no clue they were playing Cavity. Um, like I mean WFMU, my players, WNYU, you know what I mean, like places like that. But other than that, no clue. So thank you. That's a big discovery for me, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, that's
And it,
cool.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
how did you start to learn though that some of these stations were even playing you guys in the first place?
Just by word of mouth, you know what I mean? Or just like people writing to us and saying, "Hey, I heard you guys on so and so show," you know what I mean? Or they played like your live set, like Pat Duncan from WFMU had to play us, because we were right on schedule. Okay, so they play Cavity. It's like, oh, I heard you guys through there, and then I got to buy the 7 inch, and now I'm
Right.
writing to you, things like that. You know what I mean? Like so, um, but no, I mean we weren't keeping track of that type of
Sure.
stuff.
Were
Like
you
so.
aware of, was there a certain song that kept appearing that people would lean on?
I can name one really.
Yeah.
People would say like, "Oh, I heard you on the radio."
Right.
Like so. I don't think we have a song. Do you
Right.
know what I mean? That people are like, "Yeah, that's a definite like Cavity song." Well, maybe from like the last record. You know what I mean? From On the Lamb, a couple of those songs. Or
Okay.
maybe
Right.
Super Collider. Later on,
Right.
Super
Later on.
Collider, definitely. Yeah, yeah, that's a song that everyone knows by Cavity.
Yeah.
So.
Those two in particular seem to come up
Mhm.
often when people are talking about cavity. I
Yeah.
feel like those two in particular, not, and that doesn't mean that those are the only two, but I
No, of
feel like
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
those two definitely come up a lot when people are
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about the band.
They had like more widespread distribution or whatever you want to call it. Do you know what I mean? Like some,
Right.
and they're more, I don't know, I don't say acceptable, but you know what I mean? Like they're not as harsh as some other songs,
Yeah.
perhaps. You know what I mean? Like they're
Right.
more like, oh, I can get into this. Like anyone could probably get into,
Sure.
those
And that
songs.
could
Mhm.
be one of the main contributing factors is that accessibility it could have
Right.
to now other
Hmm.
ears that may not have
Yeah,
been
yeah,
into
yeah,
the
yeah.
other stuff.
Right.
It goes back to what we were talking about with certain bands. You can't
Hmm.
love it all, but
Right.
as the band is evolving, you can be into
Yes.
another period of what they're doing.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. So, um, all right. So we were talking about human objection. We got all that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep talking about like there were so many periods in Cavity, that it's just gonna be a while, like. But again, like I did a lot of the graphics, you know what I mean, like for early on in the band, and then like um, we did this recording and we wanted to put it out, and we asked a bunch of people. And I said, hey, like I said, like Joe Biafra, hey, would you put this out? And he's like, no, I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like I have other projects to do. You know what I mean? Like that's fine. And then my good friend Louis Barrera, he belonged to the Pusset fan club. And then I think he sent Pusset a tape of Cavity. And he said, hey, I'm into this. Can I talk to these guys? Like so. Um, anyway, so that's how we got hooked up with Pusset, pretty much. Like actually, no, it was right before that. It was before, yes, okay, let me just go back. I'm just, um, the recording. We were looking for a record and nobody wanted to put it out. So Lewis and I said, okay, let's put it out ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, so we got together a little bit of money and we started City of Crime Records, which only had two releases, the Human Objection and then a 7 inch by Cavity, like a re-release of the first Cavity 7 inch. Um, so we put out the record, the Human Objection, like on blue vinyl and all that stuff, 500 copies only. Like we made stickers for the cover right there and stickers for the back, like,
When I used to
yeah,
ride the bus once upon a time,
right, right.
even in Broward, I
Mhm.
started seeing those stickers
Oh, you
pop
did? Okay.
up. I don't know how long
Right,
they were there for,
right, right,
but that was even before I even knew who Cavity was. I was just
right.
seeing
Mhm.
these stickers
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
the walls of the bus,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah,
I don't know, it
I
could have been
remember
us or
that.
somebody else, you know what I mean? Like, I remember Chuck made us like a big roll of like stickers. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, here, guys, and we had like thousands of these stickers, you know what I mean? We just
Great way
needed,
to promote.
yeah, yeah, we just needed, like 50 or something, but he just gave us this roll of like, boom, here. So
Right.
we had stickers all over the place. So yeah, we put out the record and then Lewis sent one of the records to Pushead, and that's how we got hooked up with him. So that's another period of Cavity. Um,
How much of it, because I know, Pusshead, as far as the artwork goes,
right.
did you have any favorite pieces that he had done at that point?
Well, we had seen him like, growing up in like Thrasher magazine all the
Right.
time. Even though like I didn't skate, but there's two, like 3 or 4 pages talking about music, you know what I mean? So I used to buy the magazine, you know what I mean? Like, and we would see his artwork and we're like, "Oh, man, that's so good. You know what I mean? It's really good. And then we got to see it on flyers and things like that. Um, so like I don't have a favorite piece of his. I think everything he's done is like really good. It's like well done. Um, but yeah, he got in touch and he said, "Yeah, guys, I like you. You know what I mean? I like to put out something by you. What do you have in mind? What do you want to do?" So we said, "Okay, we have a bunch of new songs that we can record." And he's like, "Oh, let's do this. Why don't we get those new songs and then the Human Objection, put them on one CD, and that could be the first release on his label, Bacteria Sour." And we said, "Okay, cool." So at that time, the lineup had changed again. John Bonanno left to play in the Crumbs full time. Um, and then Steve left to play in Florida full time. So we had, I think in that recording, we had Anthony, we had Ed Matthews, George, myself, and Renee. And yeah, with that lineup, we did like those extra songs for the Bacteria Sour record, you know. And it was a good session. We did.
Was
And then
that what was on the
Mhm.
crawling 7-inch?
No, the crawling 7 inch is something else,
Okay,
actually.
something
It's another
else.
session. Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
This is one
Okay.
session um, that had these songs, the Savor and Marginal Men Blues and things like that.
Right.
But it was done with, like I said, Ed Matthews was in that recording. Anthony was in it too. Um, Wait, was it Anthony or Buddha? I don't know. No, it was Anthony, I'm pretty sure, yeah. So Anthony, Ed, myself, George, and Renee. 5 piece still, like so. And same drummer, George stuck around with us for a long time. So, and that was that release, which like that release just like spread our name out a lot more, than before. But just like, the City of Crime was cool, you know what I mean? Like we had like a base pretty much, but then Bacteria Sour just like blew it up, to like a
Sure.
bunch of new places. So
Yep.
yeah. Um, and then did we do a tour with that lineup? I don't think so. We would do shows, man. Like we would go to like Gainesville, we played a lot, Tampa.
Do you remember where in Gainesville? Some of the
Well, we played the
venues?
Hardback a few times,
Okay.
and then we used to play the Utility House. I don't know if you heard about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. We used to play the Utility quite a lot because Matt Sweeting from
Yeah.
the Utility House, he was from Miami. He was a guy from Miami. He grew up in Miami, and then he moved to Gainesville. So he was our contact, and I think we played with Hot Water Music there, and some other bands that he was into. Really good shows. People were, like responding to us really well and everything. It was a good time most of the time over there. But like I think we only did the Hardback a couple of times and then Utility and nothing beyond that. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Maybe those two places, And then we played in Tampa, the Blue Chair, like I said, in downtown Ybor. A few times actually, we played at the Blue Chair. And then beyond that, I don't remember. Like, I know we did some other places.
Didn't you play 403 Chaos too?
We did. That was later on. Yeah, that was
Later on. Okay.
yeah, with a different lineup.
Okay, gotcha.
This is still like early Cavity in a way.
Right.
Um,
It's a lot to keep track of.
yes, I know. Just different stories. I'm like, oh, what drummer? Okay, yeah, I know that era then
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
drummers.
I mean, that's fantastic because I know
Yeah,
this it's going back quite a bit,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
Quite a lot. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
did you guys ever play Orlando at this time?
Orlando. Mm, don't remember at this time.
Yeah.
Like I mean, maybe we did a show with Jason Letterman early on, but I don't recall any places right now. Like I said, it's been a long time.
Right.
but I don't recall any place in Orlando that we played
I
at.
know there's a flyer that I saw, but this may have come
Okay.
later.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
And I'm thinking this came in the later 90s. There was a show
Okay.
you guys play with Drag Body at Brody's in Orlando, but
Perhaps. I
that
know we played
wasn't
with Drag
in
Body
that
like
time. That
in
wasn't in that
Florida
time period. Right.
a couple of times. I know we played with them. I'm pretty sure a couple of times, like um it must have been in Orlando somewhere, you know what I mean? But just
Right.
so many shows and all that stuff. It's hard to remember every one of
Oh,
them
I
unless
know.
unless something happened. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that show. Like
Right.
so yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, human objection, and then we got hooked up with Passet. Then around that time, that's when we met well, we had met already, Steve from Massuck. We had met him already. And then he offered to record us at Morris Sound. He's like, oh, you guys can come over because he was an engineer over there or like an apprentice or something. He's like,
Right.
I can get you some time in here. And we're like, oh, cool. Okay.
Did you know what Morris Sound even was?
Yeah, yeah, we knew that. We knew that.
Okay.
Yeah, we knew what it was. But at the same time, like for kids like us, we're like, okay, it's just like this palace of like whatever music, but you know what I mean? But it's like,
Right.
yeah, like it wasn't our vibe really, but we're like, okay, cool, man. We can go there. And he said, like, I can get you some free time or something like that. So when we went to record with him, um, what happened? Let me see. Okay. After that one session, the human objection and those extra songs for Pal said, we did one more session. We did one more with um something happened. I think Renee had left the band for a little while. For a short time, he left the band. Um, he was going to school or something. There was something, and he just couldn't deal with the band and whatever he was doing at the moment. So we were down to like a four piece, I think. It was Anthony playing guitar and doing vocals. George, no, it was five piece actually. No, four piece, sorry. So Anthony doing vocals and guitar, George playing drums, Buddha, Brian Bush playing guitar, and myself playing bass. So we did a whole session that became the Wounded 7 inch. I don't know if you have that release. But we did like a whole session, like maybe seven songs, and
Right.
those were put on different comps and different 7 inches. So we did that. Um, After that, Renee came back, George left, and we got Betty to play drums. Betty Montivaro from Floor, she got to play drums with us, and Anthony playing guitar. So say try to go back, and Juan Montoya joined the band at that time too. That's when we went to more sound and we did the late insignificant sessions. And you know what? I'm jumping a little too much because before that record, there was another record that we put out called Somewhere Between the Train Station. So,
Yes.
so you know what I mean? Like,
Which is a personal favorite of mine. I
cool.
love that record.
But I'm getting confused because we did Somewhere Between the Train Station, one session from that record, we did it with Steve
Correct.
Heritage. Do you know
Yes.
what I mean? Like, and that was done in a little shack someplace in the middle of the woods, pretty much, in a recording studio. And there was in a little small place, like in the middle of nowhere, pretty much.
Was that Steve's idea?
He had access to it. He said,
Okay.
"Hey, let's come down." Like so we went. And that lineup was Renee. It was like a classic cavity lineup. Renee, myself, Anthony playing guitar, and George playing drums. And and that was a really good lineup. We gelled so well in that lineup. Like we did that record that flows really well. And we did a couple of tours with that lineup, which were really good. Um, um, yeah, I'll tell you something about that one tour. I think we did one or two with that lineup. But like I think the first one, we had some disagreements or something like that. Like before we played a show in Norfolk, Virginia. We had played some shows before, everything was going well. And then we had a falling out right in the middle of the tour with Anthony. So he wasn't in the band anymore for one show. So we played a show as a three-piece. It was like a house show, basically, in Norfolk, Virginia. It was Renee, myself, and George playing drums. And we did three songs as a three-piece. with the bass just being really loud, using two amps and everything else, But that's what I remember from that tour. Everything was going well, and then we had this falling out with Anthony, and then we came back home. We did that show. We came back home. We patched everything up, and we went back up. We drove 30 hours to go to Chicago and played the next show in line during the tour. We
Wow.
canceled a few shows, went back, did the show in Chicago at the Fireside Bowl, which is a really cool place.
Right. I'm glad you
There's
brought that up because that is one of those
mm,
legendary places of
places,
seeing bands
yeah,
that
yeah,
played. Just
yeah,
real quick, just playing
for
at a
sure.
place like Fireside Bowl, what was that
Mhm.
experience like for you?
Well, first, it was like, I think when we drove up, it was warm here in Miami and Florida. You get there, it's just like 30 degrees or something, you know what I mean? Like it was really freezing cold, and we were just like wearing t-shirts and shorts or whatever. I'm like, okay. So, no, but that was just, it was insane. Like, not insane, but it was just like, in this place, you have bands play like a bowling alley, man. Like, what? That's so cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and the audience was like really into us also. We had some good bands that we play with, I forget their names now, you know what I mean? And I don't even think I have like flyers of that show. But no, the audience is like every place we went to, we never really had a problem where people were like, oh, you suck or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, or we can hear that, over the feedback and all that stuff. But it was always like good shows that we had, except for like maybe like I think towards the end or like midway, towards like the latter half, I think we played some shows in Long Island. It was just like a bunch of bikers at the bar who had no interest in us, and I don't even know who booked that show. You know what I mean? Like, but do you know what I mean? Like, so every time we had a good time, pretty
Yeah.
much. Like either the band played really well, and it was just like a huge thumbs up for us for like our
Right.
egos, or just meeting the people too. Like went to the show. Like I tell you one thing, like we used to play in Birmingham, Alabama all the time. There was a record store called American Beat Records, and the owner was a huge Cavity fan. And he's like, dude, come down. I mean, come up. We have Lara playing next week. Can you guys make it? Like, we can. We will play at the store. You know what I mean? Like some, um, and we have like really good audiences over there. Like I was telling a friend of mine recently, and she's like, really? Alabama? It's like, yeah, like really good audiences over there. So we would do that all the time, just drive up, just a bunch of hours over there, do a couple shows, come back, so like they weren't like full-on tours sometimes, but just like trips, you know,
Sure.
here and there, so
Yeah. You seem
uh
kind of surprised though playing at a place like that in Alabama that there was interest. So,
yeah, yeah, but there was like huge interest, and he
right.
was always like putting like he made a fanzine too, and he was like cavity all over the fanzine, interviews and reviews and whatever, and he was always like promoting us. Russell, that's his name. I forget his last name right now, but really good guy, at least to us.
Right.
So, and we will go up all the time and play, so that was cool.
Were there
Uh,
other towns like that were similar where you were
Similar.
surprised that there was such an
Mhm.
interest in Cavity?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Let me see. Can't recall any that just like, and they'll be like, oh wow, yeah, this place. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think they were all good, like, and not to like even at the field. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? We always had like a pretty good experience, like
Right.
overall. So
Because also too, it's possible some of those towns may not have gotten bands like you guys.
right, right, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know that from Birmingham, like a bunch of those people, they were pretty young when they got to see us, you know what I
Right.
mean? And then they started bands because of seeing us, you know what I mean? They were
Right.
influenced Cavity, like
Absolutely.
some. So yeah, so that was a really good feeling too.
And that
So
kind of is like what you were mentioning earlier on in your journey, where you go see these bands play and you're like, I need to be on that stage.
yeah, man, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I wanted to do that, and they did it too.
Right.
Like one of our last releases with Cavity After Death, Cavity AD, was with a band who some of those kids played in that band. Do you know what I mean? Like they formed this band, and then we got to make a record with them.
That's
Like a
cool.
split 12 inch.
Yeah. That's
So that
neat.
was really cool. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to the lineup, and so we did somewhere between the train station, and then that lineup just got broken up. We got Betty to play drums. We got Juan to play guitar, and then it was Anthony, myself, and Renee. and that's when we did the Late Insignificant sessions with
Yeah.
Steve at Morrisound, at a different place, so,
Right.
and that's when we started playing like 403 Chaos and places like that more often because, the place was open. He was like booking all these shows and we would go out there just to hang out with him or just to play some shows. Also, we had met Henry from Syrup, and Floor, later on.
Yep.
And he's from Winter Haven, which is right next to Tampa, that area. Um, so, you know what I mean? We had more friends to go see, when we did those trips to the West. So
Right. And Syrup also had origins in Tallahassee as well,
really, okay. I had no
Panhandle.
clue. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and they were quite different in their sound,
Yeah, yeah.
but they played with a lot of different bands. Like you guys
Right.
may not have had the same type of sound, but everybody just played with whomever was
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
scene.
Yeah, yeah. And like, I mean, I thought like we played with them, like a couple of times with Sarah. And from what I remember, it was kind of like heavy-ish stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe not as slow as our stuff. It was just more like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Like, well, they're faster or something, but it was like it had that vibe anyway.
And that's the thing though too, depending
Mhm.
on when this happened, like bands like
Right.
Cavity, for example,
Hmm.
one record would sound completely different than another because
Yeah.
maybe different people coming in and out of the band. And
Right.
some bands just live have a whole different vibe than they
Yeah,
do in the
that too.
studio.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And Henry's a good guy, you know what I mean? Like, so talk to him every now and then, really cool guy. Um, but yeah, like I said, we started to meet him, and then Steve, hung out with him a little bit more, went to Morrisound, did that session for Lane Insignificant.
Right.
That got put out, like when a really good release, a nice cover and everything from Passhead. So that kind of blew up a little bit more. And that's when we got to go to the West Coast. You know, we got offered to play Fiesta Grande, which was like the Slap a Ham festival,
Okay.
a, a Gilman Street project, which is like, whoa, Gilman, that's awesome. Um, so we flew out to LA. We played a show in LA with a bunch of bands. I think one of the flyers is in the zine, but just Menace the Bastard and I don't know, a bunch of other bands, you know what I mean? Like a huge bill. So we played that show. Then we drove 6 hours to Berkeley to play Gilman. And that was amazing, man. Like just playing in like, I want to say like a few hundred people, you know what I mean? And like this really tiny space that's historic, you know what I mean? It's like, this is cool, you know what I mean? Like some, it was good bands that played with us too. I think Dystopia played that day too, I think. But a bunch of good bands. And then we got to play. And again, it was the same thing, like kind of like when we did the Powerhouse show,
Right.
with that front and everything stage is right there, but people are just like on top of you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They're playing and just everything is together. We're in this together for fun. Let's do it. And we did it, and it was just amazing. You know what I mean? Just a really good feeling. We got to meet Pusset in person that day.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he went to the show. Um, we just hung out and met people. Like so. It was a good time overall. I mean, like, let me say something else about this. Historic places. We get to play CBGB one time too. And I think Scott mentioned it the other day, like
Right.
drop by play that show.
Yep.
But when we went to play that show, we drive up, and we see Ralphie Boy. I don't know if you've ever seen him, but he's like a really menacing guy, just big, and just like, he's the sweetest guy in the world, you know what I mean? And I had met him before, when we played ABC in Rio, because he was a promoter or something. And then he booked this show for his birthday. So we show up, he's like, boys, how you doing? Everything good? Everything good? Okay. You're on in 20 minutes. All right. We just got here and just we did the show and everything. But yeah, no, I played ABC No Rio. I played CBGB. I played Gilman Street Project. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what I have read about. And
Right.
I did get to play. And I'm like, dude, my life is more complete now. You know what I mean? Like,
When you played some of those venues, did you
mhm.
guys have a lot of merch? Were you moving a lot of it too when these
Yeah,
other people were maybe had
mhm.
discovered you guys for the very first time?
Right, right. Like it depends. You know what I mean? Those tours, I always wanted to take something. I was always the merch guy too. You know what I mean? I'm the guy sitting with the table, selling stuff, talking to people. You know what I mean? Like I'm the one that's always like, hey, talking to other people. I'm always talking to people. You know what I mean? Like, um, so yeah, I'm sure we took things, and I think that for that one show, I think that we had an actual 7-inch that Pusset had put out. already. You know what I mean? Like that we call it the Fiesta Grande 7 inch, like, and I think we sold a few copies during that show, you know what I mean? The Fiesta Grande festival in Gilman. But no, we would always try to take something, at least a few shirts, like I'm really seasoned with like, I know a lot about silk screening now, but back then I had no knowledge of that, and it's kind of simple. I should have done a lot more of this, back then so I can sell more shirts, doing tours, because it's like gas money, and things like that too.
Sure.
But yeah, we always took things, stickers, anything, but yeah, for that show, I think that we had a table, like for at Gilman, and we sold some things, like some 7 inches,
Right.
like that. Or we just like exchange addresses with people, write us here, we'll send you something, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? There was always like a connection to be made, in some way.
Do you have any
So,
recollection of someone coming up to the merch table and
mm,
maybe comparing Cavity to another band or just
mm.
bringing up someone else that they thought you guys could sound like?
Well, there was always that, that I hate God comparison. It's like, oh, you guys are like these guys or whatever, like Buzz Oven, a little bit, not much, you know what I mean? Like,
Little
um,
did they know that the drummer of I Hate God almost played with you guys.
well, with the guitar player, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
sorry, the guitar.
But
Right, right,
yeah, 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 yeah. No, yeah. I know. Almost play that show. Yeah.
right.
Um, no, but yeah, yeah, like, yeah, people would say things, and it's like, cool, we're into them too. It was nothing like offensive or whatever. Like, oh, you guys sound like these guys. You know what I mean? It's just like at a show, trying to talk to people about something. You come up with a subject. It's like, oh, cool. Like, but it wasn't something like, oh, well, you guys are copying this band or something like that.
Were they surprised you were from Miami?
A lot of people were, yeah, yeah, like, oh, expect you guys to be from somewhere else, with the
Right,
sound that you have,
right.
right? But we're like, yeah, we're from over there, ever, like some,
Over
yeah,
there, like it's just its own island somewhere in the
yeah, yeah, it's
universe.
just like down at the bottom of the country,
I mean,
man,
it's true. It is.
It is, yeah, yeah, and that's, Fausto was saying that too. It's hard for some bands to get out, like, and I'm not saying that it wasn't hard for us, what I mean, but like from our crowd, we had us, we got hooked up with Hydra Head, Man's Ruin, Bacteria Sour, what I mean, Rhetoric Records, what I mean,
Right.
AAA. They got hooked up with a bunch of other, labels, the Crumbs, Lookout Records. Do you know what I mean? Like, so some bands, you know what I mean, were able to like hook up with these other labels who gave them like graded exposure. You know what I mean? Like out there. So it didn't happen to everybody, but I guess, we got lucky in some way.
Right.
You know?
And Hydra Head being one of those labels
Yeah.
that had their bands that
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
more
yeah.
people were aware of. What
Right.
was that like as far as that
Mm.
relationship with Hydra? How did they notice you guys to sign
Yeah,
you
yeah.
to their label?
Okay, two things. Let me see. I got to go back to the lineups and everything else. You know what I mean? I think we did the human objection. I mean, the late insignificant session, like with Juan. And then Juan and Betty were out of the band. You know what I mean? Uh, and then we got Ryan Weinstein to play with us. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Do you know Ryan at all?
I don't.
Okay, yeah, Ryan Weinstein. He's like a local Miami kid. You know what I mean? We got seen him at shows, and he's like, "Yeah, I play guitar." And we said, "Yeah, do you want to play with us?" Yeah, I'm a big fan. So he started playing with us. Like him. And then we got George back in the band. Um, so that was like a whole new thing. Ryan's very like versatile in the stuff he plays. Wrote some songs and everything. So he was like a big addition. Him and Anthony, they just, they gel together in guitars. You know what I mean? So anyway, so Ryan came into the picture. Again, after we did Rhetoric Records, you know what I mean, and Bacteria Sour, we just kept moving and other people kept offering things. So it's like Man's Ruin, Frank Kozik. He said, yeah, I like you guys. Let's do a record. So we did that. And that was like another record with a different lineup. Again, a different lineup. Anthony was doing vocals and guitar. Ryan was doing guitars and vocals. I was doing bass. And then Henry from Floor and Syrup played drums for us, you know? Um, and that
That
was like,
was Super Collider?
that was the Super Collider sessions. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was, it was surprising, I mean, at least for me to play with Henry because I've known him as a guitar player. Never knew he played drums. And the guy plays drums like a guitar player. You know what I mean? Like to me, like he doesn't sound like a regular drummer. You know, what I mean, the things he does. I mean, he's influenced by Doug Crover and people like that, but still, like, I had never heard, things he did for us in that record. I was just like, whoa, what? He's gonna do this?
Right.
Okay, that sounds great. You know what I mean? But like, I was just like, I could never think of like the things he did. Not that they're so far out there, but it wasn't what we were doing. You know what I mean? Like so I think that for that record, we became really tight, and Henry became like a major part of that record too, because of his drumming. So we did that with Man's Ruin.
You
And
also went back to Jeremy Dubois as well.
yeah, we went to him. Yeah, we went to him. Yeah.
How
Uh,
much influence did he have in the sound of that record too?
no, he was always like up for anything that we proposed. He's like, okay, let's try it. Let's try this, let's try that. We did some overdubs and things like that for that record.
Right.
We had never done before. Everything that we did pretty much up until that point was live, always live. Like I don't really like the studio. It just feels too like, I don't know, cold and I don't know. There's something about it. You know what I mean? I like the live experience. I mean, even like playing music, I like to get together with people and play music, not just send you a bunch of files and you do your thing on your end. And
Right.
it's just it doesn't feel like music really. No, but Jeremy had like he knew what buttons to push, like on the board for us to sound better and better. So thank you to him, for all those years of like helping us out. You know what I mean? Just mixing records and things like that. So yeah, Man's Ruin. We did a tour. Let me see. Yeah, like that period is kind of like, what I mean, it's kind of foggy in my head because like we did some tours, which we went out as a four-piece, and then like after a couple of days, we became a three-piece and finished the tour as a three-piece. You know what I mean? Like it was just one of those moments, you know what I mean, in the band's life. I know we got to San Francisco again. We got to go to Frank Kozak's studio, this giant warehouse, you know what I mean, where he had like all his records being like made and like posters and everything. Big fans of his art, you know what I mean? Like we got to see all that, hung out with him a little bit. Then we came back this way. We played Texas. We just went all around the coast and the border, you know what I mean, to like
Right.
San Francisco, and then we came back.
Do you
Uh,
remember what the shows were like in Texas?
Texas, it was like the first time that we had gone there, that we, had gone to Texas, and
Right.
a lot of people that were waiting for us to show up, like
That's
to show
pretty
up and
cool.
play shows. Yeah, we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're waiting for you guys to show up, to come up and play shows. Yeah, yeah. So I do remember that we stayed with some people in Amarillo, Texas. We did some shows there. Um, but like the highlight was like mainly like, San Francisco, at least for us a little bit. But all the other shows were like very satisfying. You know what I mean? So Renee wasn't in the band at that moment. Again, we had these periods where he wasn't in, he
Right.
was, and all that stuff, and I kept the band going throughout the whole life, of the band. Pretty much it's like, well, we got all this, I don't want to let it go. We can just build something from that onto something new and get new players.
That's
So
why you're
it was,
Dan. That's why you're Dan Cavity.
I guess so. Yeah, Chuck told me that. Yeah, you're captive, man. So, um, but no, everybody else put in
Of course.
their stuff too. Like give credits to like
Absolutely.
because if it wasn't for them, there wouldn't be anything. You know what I mean? Like so, but no, no, yeah. Like so, we kept it going. I kept it going, and we did Super Collider, and then the Hydra Head connection was to Ryan Weinstein, our guitar player. He was friends with Aaron Turner from Hydra Head. They used to write to one another or something like that. I think Ryan tried out for Cable, that band from Boston or one of those parts up north.
Yeah, they're from the Northeast somewhere. Yeah.
Right, right. He hung out with them and tried out to play bass for them or something like that. Didn't work out. Came back, but he met those guys. And then Hydra Head's like, okay, well, let's do number whatever on Hydra Head. What do you guys think? We're like, yeah, let's do it. You know. Um, I don't think that any band from Hydra Head sounded like us, really. I don't think they did. I mean, we're just really, um, we stood out amongst
Right.
that crowd, you know what I mean? Like, but not in a bad way, like so. And I think it brought more people to Hydra Head because other people who listened to us, you know what I mean? Like, went in their direction. But yeah, the connection was mainly Ryan, and then I started talking to Aaron too, and he's a really cool guy. So yeah, so then the lineup for one of those tours that we did with ISIS, we played with them a couple of times. We did like a mini tour of the East Coast, with them. And it was myself, Ryan, Anthony, and Henry. Yeah, the Super Collider lineup did that tour. So the tour was really cool, man. Just big shows, man. Like these
Oh, I
guys
bet.
draw people, like Botch and ISIS and whoever else, just like huge crowds, like, and we got to play with them. It was really cool. That tour was amazing. Um, and then we got back in town. And then Henry, it was too much for him to just drive 4 hours or for us to drive 4 hours to go practice and all that stuff. So, he stayed in Winter Haven and, you know what I mean? Like he went his way, started his other bands, Dove, and, whatever else he was doing at the moment. Um, Anthony, yeah, we had a falling out with Anthony. So, we just needed new people and we found George again, who had played with us before. And then Jason Landrian, who plays in Black Cobra, he came to play with us, and Ryan. So it was a five-piece again, and Renee came back into the picture. So we had a whole new lineup, and Hydra Head wanted to do a record, and we said, let's start writing. So we started writing. Um, and some really good songs came out of that recording, for Hydra Head, for On the Lamb.
Right.
I like a lot of those songs too, like so. I like all the releases, you know what I mean? I had like my little things about each one of them because like I wanted
Sure.
something to be this way and it came up this way, you know what I mean? Like whatever, but little things. But
I
no,
think
that was
also the
really
band has evolved so much.
right,
Even
right,
though
yeah,
there's different members that are kind of
hmm
cycling in and out, it
yeah,
has evolved either way.
yeah. It has to. Like it's got to. I can't just like keep it in that box like I mentioned before. Like so.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I know the on the line sessions, really good stuff. And we never got to tour with that band, with that lineup much. You know what I mean? Like we did the record, it came out, good responses, good reviews in a lot of magazines, like Interest. We did a picture disc, for that record. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a picture disc for
I
that
have.
release, like
Yes.
um
But
yeah.
the one thing
Mhm.
though I remember from On the Lamb
Right.
is out of a lot of the different
Mhm.
artwork at that time, 7 inches and full
Right.
lengths, that was the most minimalist I felt.
Minimalist, yeah. And that was a choice, like we told Aaron, like, we want to do this, what do you think? Try to work with this. And then he came up with, what he came up with. We're like, yeah, cool, let's do it. Like just something new.
Right.
Um, but yeah, we had a picture disc, and with that lineup, we got to do a few shows, and we got to do two shows with Cutthroats Nine, which was like ex Unsane. We got to do a show with them in Miami, and then another show with them in Tampa. And the show in Tampa was the last show we ever played together as Cavity.
Wow.
We had it was just, I don't know, man. Like it was just a moment, I had a kid already, you know what I mean? I was married, had a kid. Um, Other people were thinking about moving out of town, like Jason wanted to go to California. Ryan was going to move to Chicago, so like everything was coming to an end pretty much. And I was going to go to New York to like go to grad school also, so like everything was coming down to an
Sure.
end. We did the show. It was very chaotic, very chaotic. We lost Renee for a few moments in the audience. We're like, we're playing, where's this guy? You know what I mean? Like, um,
Was he
yeah,
known to do that at shows like that?
at some points, like I said, our shows were sometimes unpredictable. Like for that
Right.
show, the drummer's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and we start, and we were so loud, we couldn't hear him. So, we had done no sound check, nothing. We just plugged in and just turned to 11 and just rah. And then we're playing. We're like, I can't keep track. This guy, I can't, like, can't hear him. So we had to start all over. And, Renee had gone to the bathroom in the meantime or something. We started playing the song. Where's this guy now? Like, whatever. I mean, it's just like chaos. Um, So, but yeah, we had many moments like that too throughout the band's history. You know what I mean? For one thing or another, just blah. But overall, like it was a good time.
Was
So,
it
but yeah,
known though for that show, for that last show? Was it known from
it
every
wasn't
person
known. It
going,
was
okay,
on the drive back. You know what I mean? I just kept thinking about it. I'm like, okay, these two guys are going to leave in the near future. You know what I mean? I'm going to leave too. I just want to do something else. I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I love music. I love playing. But it just everything is too chaotic. People are pulling in different directions. Even like in songwriting, I mean, we're having like arguments about this and that. And I was like, nah, just let's take a break. So 2001, like I said, that show was the last show we played. Um, and then, like I said, I moved up north to go to school. I had another kid up north. Ryan moved to Chicago. Jason stayed in California. He's still over there. Renee's in Miami. George stopped playing music, as far as I know. So from 2000, the band lasted from 1992 to like 2001, almost 10 years.
it's a
You know?
great run.
Yeah, and a lot of releases and documentation, stories, like, and I said, I got to play these three major places that for me are just like, you know what I mean? Like a big deal in my book.
Right.
Like I got to play there. It's like great. So,
And so many
uh,
other places where
in
there
many,
were these
yes,
people who were so
yeah,
excited to see you guys. They were waiting
yes,
for
yes,
this
yes.
moment.
No, not to downplay all that. No, we played some amazing shows. I used to love to play like house shows, set up in someone's living room and play with just everybody around us. That was just amazing. You know what I mean? Like different places that we got to play. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, and the people we got to meet, like, you know, hats off to like anyone who showed up to the shows. You know what I mean? Like, thank you for doing that and just, keeping us like excited to do more and more. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
uh,
There was another record that we kind of also glazed over a little bit,
tell
but it
me.
was it was a live split you did with Bongzilla, which is one of my favorite
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
outputs by you guys too. What was it like doing a split with them?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so we met, through Rhetoric Records, right? They had Bongzilla and a bunch of other bands. We got to meet those guys, really cool guys. Mike is a really cool guy, funny. And then the rest, I forget their names now, but we got to hang out. We spent like on our one of the first tours that we did, when we had that really tight lineup of like myself, Renee, Anthony, and George. I think we stayed in the Midwest for like a week or something, playing different shows.
Yeah.
So we got to meet those guys, and the record is a live one. Yeah, we did a show in Madison, excuse me, in Madison, Wisconsin, and Bongzilla played that show too. And they decided to like put a tape in the soundboard and see what it sounds like afterwards. You know what I mean? So like, so it was really cool. I mean, like it was a live. The performance is pretty chaotic from our end. Like I think we do a bunch of noise for one time. I just made it up on the spot. You know what I mean? We're just having fun. Um, but no, that was another good connection to have. Bongzilla. Like so, really good band, and I like that record a lot too. And the whole packaging of it, it's pretty cool.
Do you
Like.
remember whose idea was it for the packaging and the cover
For
art?
rhetoric, it was mainly like Brad, and he had like some design people that he worked with. Like we had no input in that.
Okay.
Like I mean, the cover to like somewhere between the train station, it's iconic. You know what I mean? It's such a great cover. You know
I
what I mean?
got a very good,
Mhm.
bad, and the ugly vibe from the
Yeah,
cover
yeah,
of
yeah,
it. Is
yeah,
that where you were
yeah,
heading with?
yeah. Like we told them, oh, we like, you know what I mean, like these like spaghetti Western movies. And
Yeah,
so you just say, oh, let's do this. Why not? And then they showed us like a proof, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. Why not, man? It just looks amazing.
it's a great cover.
So, and then like for the 7 inch, it's like a worker, you know what I mean, with like a hammer,
Right.
at a factory or something. It's like that. It's right on, man. Let's do it. Um, but he had some designers, you know what I mean, who worked on like really cool stuff, and at least for us, like some I like all the designs they did. So, um, but yeah, like everything, everything comes to an end, and like 2001 was the last show, and then I moved out of the state. I was away for like maybe 4 years. I went to art school and did a lot of that, and like I wasn't playing music. I had my bass with me and everything, but I wasn't playing music. Like, I don't know. Once you like, at least for me, like I really gel with the people I played with in the past. So like if I got to do something, I want to call Ed Matthews, just or whoever. It's like, hey, dude, you want to play? I'm not gonna call some. I'm not gonna put an ad or something in a record store looking for players and let's see what we can do. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna do that. I think I'm just gonna go to the people who I know that I just have a good vibe with. You know what I mean? Like, and then play. So, so yeah, from 2001 to like 2015, there was no music in any
Wow.
way.
Were you
Did a lot of
going to shows, like still
I was
experiencing
going to shows. I was going
bands,
to
live
certain
music?
shows. Yeah, yeah, I was going to certain shows. So I finished art school in about 2005. I came back to Florida. I came back to Miami. Um, I taught college and then I started teaching public school. You know what I mean? So I had a new job, and I was doing art mainly, but I was going to shows in Miami. Um, and then 2008 came, the whole crash and everything. And I moved to Martin County. I moved to Hope Sound, which you're familiar with,
Yes,
just
correct.
I
Absolutely.
moved to Hope Sound. And, I raised my kids in Hope Sound. I moved to Stewart, you know what I mean? Like, so I was in Martin County for a long time. But I was going to shows, like ISIS came down to like Orlando one day, and a few friends of mine came up from Miami, met me in Hope Sound, and we went to see ISIS in Orlando. You know what I mean? So I was seeing some shows here and there, listening to music all the time anyway.
Right.
But I wasn't playing. I wasn't playing anything, like, and then through the years, I mean, people would write to me. It's like, oh, can you guys play a show next week? I'm like, dude, we've been broken up for like 5, 6 years. Don't you know that? Not in a bad way, but like, I guess,
Right.
the memo wasn't around, I guess, you know what I mean? For some people. Um,
Did you miss anything about playing at that point?
I was busy with other stuff. You know what I mean? And not to downplay music and everything, but like looking back, and a lot of people have said this, you know what I mean? Like playing music is a lot of waiting around, for that hour, 45 minutes that you just have like the most fun. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of waiting around, and now it's just like, I don't want to wait around anymore. I just want to do things, So like doing my zines or doing art stuff, you know what I mean? I can get it moving and just feel that relief. Like, okay, it's out there. You know what I mean? Like, but I was still selling records, you know what I mean, that I had, so I was
Right.
still talking to people and they were asking, oh, what about a reunion? What about this? What about that? Um, and I was like, nah, I don't think it's gonna happen, like, so after a little while
That's
of
what they all
living,
say, by the way.
yeah, yeah, I know, right? After a little while, a few years, you know what I mean, maybe like 5 years after moving to Martin County, like I started considering, well, maybe I can start talking to some people. Um, I spoke to Renee. He said, "No, no way. I'm not doing it again." At that time, he's like, "No, no, I'm not." I would speak to Anthony, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm into it. Let's see what we can do." But then we had no drummer. So I was like, "Okay, what do we do?" And like, so there was like, I was starting to talk to people about like the possibility of doing something. Um, so anyway, 2015 rolls around, and Priya from KLS calls me and she says, I want to do a benefit show. I need to get a car, because she had an accident and all that stuff. You know about that.
Absolutely.
And it's like I want to get my own car, and it's going to be this much, and I need help. And I'm asking everybody around the country who I know to try to put a show together or whatever. And she's like, "How about Cavity getting back together?" I said, "I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen." And I can start talking to people, like, but I started talking to people and having the purpose of helping Priya. They were like, okay, let's do it. So boom, it happened. You know what I mean? Like we got together with Dan Norris, another drummer that we had, in the past. He did like some tracks on the Wounded 7 inch, another 7 inches, you know what I mean? Like, so he was another drummer that we had. We asked him, and he said, yes, I'll play. Ryan Weinstein came down from Chicago to play. Ed Matthews agreed to play. And then Renee said, I'll do it too, So there's a video, which I'm sure you've seen, from
Yes,
that performance.
absolutely.
And it was great, man. Just to get back out there and just do it again. It was just like so much fun.
And it was for a really great cause.
It was a good cause. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You need help. We're here. We're your friends, we're
Right.
gonna help you out, so
And kudos to you guys for, because it's not always easy, right? Coming back after that amount of
yeah.
time away
Mhm.
from it and
Right, right.
bringing it back together, which deep down, I mean, that wasn't
Yeah.
even part of your intention, but because of the
Because of yeah,
situation with Priya, you all did
right.
it. So really
Mhm.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then so we're like, okay, this worked tonight, but it feels good to play. No, but I'm saying like, you know what I mean? Like we're like, this is gelling, you know what I mean? Things are flowing again, like I want to write more things. Are you guys down for this? I'm like, yeah, sure. Um, so so anyway, Ed Matthews was on board and Renee. Do you know what I mean? Like Ryan had to go back to Chicago. He couldn't stay here, you know what I mean? And then Dan Norris had other things to do. So we said, okay, well, let's try the three of us, you know what I mean? See what we can do. And we started working like that, writing music again with a drum machine or something, some kind of like contraption that we can put together. So that was good, man. To get that going. At the same time, we met Rick Smith from Torch, you know, and I don't know, somebody like I think we talked to him. He's like, yeah, do you guys want to play? I can play with you guys. You know what I mean? And he's a great guy. And don't get me wrong. He's a great guy, but you can't pin him down in the sense that like, hey, I want to write music, but it's a little bit slower, my process. We got to get together and jam. He's a lifer. He's out there. He's got to play with this band, and then next 2 months he's playing with another band because that's how he makes his living. You know what I mean? Like, we
Sure.
can't just keep him down. Hey, Rick, 2 months. We can't do that. But he's like, I'm talking to a guy in Brooklyn at this place called St. Vitus, and he wants you guys to play. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. You know what I mean? I'll play for you guys. He's going to pay for our tickets. So once we got back together and we renamed the band Cavity AD, Cavity After Death or whatever, more offers were coming down with like, hotel rooms and like, plane tickets paid for, whatever, and good guarantees. We're like, okay, cool, let's do it. So we did play St. Vitus with Rick Smith. That was a great show. Um, and then what else? We did a couple of shows with them at Churchill's, like packed houses at Churchill's, and and then he had to go. He had to go on tour with Torch or somebody, like
Right.
so we kept on writing and we got something together that we liked. I think it's called After Death.
I think it is called. Yeah, you're correct when
Yeah,
you said
After
it's
Death. Yeah,
after
yeah. So
death.
we came up with that. And another contact from South Florida, Justin, who lives in on the West Coast. He runs a label called Valley King Records. He's like, yeah, I'm interested. Like I think I got in touch with him and I said, hey, Justin, look, we got this new recording. Would you be able to put it out? And he's like, yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. So he put it on vinyl. Um, I don't even know how many copies we did, maybe 1,000 or something like that. But it was good just to like have a comeback record and
Right.
something that we were happy with. The sound, maybe some people don't like the sound. Like I've read
It
some
definitely
comments.
had more of like a drone-ish kind of
Yeah, yeah.
vibe to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, more like Earth, like early Earth or something, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like something like that, which I dug. I was like, that's only one or two guys doing this, man. It's so heavy.
sure.
So that was what we were like aiming for. And just like I said, doing new things.
Was that the whole
Mhm.
reasoning too for the name shift to Cavity AD
Yeah,
was to kind of
kind
this
of
is
break it
the next
away.
chapter of
Yeah, kind
this
of break it
band.
away.
Yeah,
Yeah, break it away. It's after death, but at the same time, like that wasn't all that we were gonna play.
sure.
You know what I mean? Like those new songs, because people were gonna be like, "Oh, what about this song? Why
They
don't you
still
play?"
want the hits.
Yeah, they want to hit it. I mean, like so, and we don't mind playing those. Like
Right.
maybe in a new way, which we did for some songs. Um, so that was good. Um,
I also think too,
mm,
because it's been so long since you guys have played, I think
right.
about situations where you may have discovered this band later
Mm,
on after your initial run.
yeah.
This could be the very first time that you're seeing a band like Cavity or Cavity AD, and
mm,
you've been waiting for this moment to see some of those other songs from the bands that you
yeah.
played or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it was something that people wanted. Like I said,
Right.
during that 14-year period, people kept asking, hey, what about, what about, what about?
Absolutely.
Here we are. Like it's a new chapter. You know, I mean, I wasn't gonna just like we weren't gonna just go back and just re-record on the lam and do it in a new way. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like just wasn't possible. So we did some shows with Rick. We had the new record, and then Rick left. And again, it was just Ed, myself, and Renee. And we're like, oh, we need some players. And we got to meet at one of our shows. We got to meet this guy called Andrew McLeese. He plays in a band called Other Body. And really cool guy, man. And he's like, I love you guys. And I play guitar. If you guys ever need someone, let me know, please. I would love to play with you. And so we got him added to the lineup. And then as we met him, we still didn't have a drummer. We was like looking for a drummer. And Andrew's girlfriend, Melissa, she plays drums. She's a curator, an artist, what I mean? But she also plays drums. And we're like, hey, Melissa, like, would you want to try this? And she's like, I don't know if I can do that. You know what I mean? Like, so, so we started another project called KVT1. I think I sent it to you.
You did.
It's like Cavity One in a way, right?
I didn't
Um,
know what it stood for, so thanks for clearing
yeah,
that up.
it's yeah, KVT1, Cavity One. Yeah, she's like, just like an offshoot or something, like, but it was just like totally different. We just got together to jam, like Andrew and myself and Melissa, and we're still playing these songs, and they're kind of like, well, like a heavy, like Jesus and Mary Chain type vibe, kind of shoegazy in a way. With Melissa just doing like basic drums on a tom, what I mean, basic beats on a tom. And we're like, this sounds awesome, what I mean? Too bad nobody recorded this. I know we all have phones and everything, but nobody
Right.
recorded a note that we did.
Wow.
And then we got to play a show. We had to play a show at, I think there was a place called Space Mountain in Miami. So kind of like a experimental type place, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Art gallery slash noise place, whatever.
Right.
And somebody, either Andrew or Melissa, got us on this show, and we went to play the show. We played the show in a band called Ian Yachimo, which is Brian Adams and his friend. I forget his name right now. It's a two-piece band, bass and drums. They got to see us there. You know what I mean? So we did the KBT1 project. We just said, "No, we're just going to play the show." Cool, and that's it. So this guy Brian Adams comes over to us like, dude, I love this set. It was awesome, like, and he's like, yeah, I play drums, by the way, and I know you guys are looking for a drummer for Cavity, like, so let me know. I'll try out. So we tried him out, worked out perfectly. So we got Brian playing drums, Andrew playing guitar, and then myself and then Renee. We have a five-piece lineup again. So we started doing more shows. You know, we got a tour together, to go up the East Coast, played at different places. We had the guarantees, blah, 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 better promotion for most of
Right.
everything.
A
Um,
lot has changed too.
yeah, right, right, right. And yeah,
Social media is now,
yes, 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 yes.
a
And
force.
then, yeah, and then the audiences, you know what I mean, were like a lot more people would show up to. Oh, but I'm forgetting this, man. Like in 2019, while Rick was playing with us, we get to play this awesome festival called Days of Darkness in Baltimore. Huge festival. Neurosis played. It was like a 2-day festival. We played with Neurosis and then a bunch of other bands like stoner bands and things like that. Like some other bands that had nothing to do with like that type of music. You know what I mean? Like they played too. And we played to like, I don't know, I mean, like at least 1,000 people or something like that in a big venue. You know what I mean? Big stage.
Right.
Everything. It reminded me of the Cameo stage.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's like big. Um, so anyway, we got to play that show with Rick, so and then after that happened, that's when we went to like the other lineup with Brian, Andrew, myself, Ed, and Brian. And we had to do that tour up the East Coast. We played Gainesville again, a really good show. We played Las Rosas with that lineup, and it was just an amazing show, like really good show. Um, where else did we play? We did another show with Rick Smith at Respectables, man. That was just like one of like the best performances we did, man. We were just like so on, we
Right.
just slowed down the material. Everybody was on key, like on, like everybody was like just on point, you know what I mean? And we just like delivered.
Was it turn out good for that show, considering how tight
It
the
was a
band
really good
was?
turnout. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good.
I think there was I think we were opening up for like two like European bands that came down. Do you know what I mean? But a lot of people showed up for the show, man. Like, and we just delivered. You know what I mean? Like, it was such a good feeling afterward. Like, man, this was a great show. So, and we did the same with a lot of shows that we play with Andrew and Brian. You
Right.
know, um, and then we tried to keep it going, and I had more songs, but there was a thing. I think Andrew wasn't available to record, and then Brian the same. You know what I mean? Like, so it was again myself, Ed Matthews, and Renee just doing everything. I play some drums in a song. Ed did all the guitars, the mixing. So that was all taken care of by us, pretty much the mixing, the recording. So that's why it sounds the way it sounds. It's a different vibe altogether. I wanted to get a drummer, but it was just like I don't know, man. Maybe I'm a little anxious sometimes, and I want things to get done now, and I can't wait. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
so maybe we could have waited, to have like um, what's his name, Brian play drums on it, but I think we did it all with Ed Matthews doing drums, like like drum machine type stuff, So, um,
Is that what would become the Wraith record?
yeah, right, yeah, yeah. So that came that, and out of that record, out of four songs, I like two of them a lot. The other two, I'm like, they're kind of like I'm not too happy with them now. At the moment, it's just like really gung ho about them,
Right.
but
What do you think changed?
I don't know. I think it was the lack of just having an actual physical drummer. You know what I mean? We were looking at bands and listening to like Earth and people like that. You know what I mean? Like early stuff, right? And then some tribal type stuff and like just bands that did stuff like in a very primitive way, which I respect a lot. Do you know what I mean? Like just a guy with a tom and that's all you're gonna hear. Oh, okay. And they made that work.
Right.
That's cool. You know what I
It
mean? Like,
is.
so we were aiming for that, but it wasn't happening really. You know what I mean? We just couldn't find the right person, So after a little bit of time, that record came out and I think, yeah, we did one show. Oh man, it was early 2020 and we did one show, which was not the best show ever.
Where was it?
It was at Churchill's actually,
Okay.
and you know what happened? Like, okay, so we had 2 weeks until the show, and we said, okay, the weekend prior to the show, let's get together and practice. So the weekend prior to the show, there was a hurricane coming by. So it was like warnings everywhere. We just couldn't move. I couldn't go down to Miami, from Martin County to practice with them. They couldn't get out of their houses, really. So we couldn't practice. And then during the week was really hard because of work and blah, 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 blah. So it was mainly we were going to show up to the gig. It was on a Friday night, I think. You know what I mean? Like show up to the gig and play the show. So we did, and it wasn't very, very good. The whole performance, you know what I mean? Like at least I wasn't happy with it. You know what I mean? Um, so that was the last show ever, pretty much. So, um, oh well, things have to come to an end. So
Was it emotional at any point for you knowing that that was it?
not really, because I have been through it before.
Right.
And as I get older, like other things take priority, you know what I mean? And I see this, and hopefully I don't sound um, like I'm dissatisfied with playing music, but playing music, it's a relationship you have with other people, right? That's one thing. And then the other thing is like you got to meet in many places. Do you know what I mean? According to schedule, to this, to that, the other, that it just
Definitely.
becomes such a job. That when I see a band on stage, I clap before they play. Do you know what I mean? Because
Right.
they made that work to be able to make it to this point. Do you know what I'm
Sure.
saying? Like, and for me, it was like calling people and this and we have to wait and I'm done. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go through that anymore. I just want whenever I want to do something, hopefully I'll be able to do it whenever I want to. You know what I mean? As opposed to having to wait,
Right.
like so. And I respect everybody's schedules and everything, you know what I mean? And what they have to do, it's fine, you know what I mean? But it's just, like I said, getting older, it gets to be like that. You know what I mean? At least
Yeah.
like I just want to do my thing and my thing involves this, that, and the other. And this one person I can count on and cool, let's do it. So but it wasn't like, like this, oh gosh, like type of thing.
Right. And
Like,
everyone can feel differently about
yeah, yeah,
their
yeah.
own art, so to speak. So I appreciate
Right.
your
Yeah.
your how you experienced it.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
And then
So
And the other guys were busy too with other stuff, you know what I mean? Like, so like it wasn't like we were missing anything, you know, like, oh,
Right.
you know, like we were all busy with different projects. So
Absolutely. And one of
it's
those other
cool.
projects I think
Hmm.
important to also mention was Dustraps,
Yes. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that was quite the departure from what people were
Right.
familiar with when it comes to Cavity or even really
For
any other
me.
band you may have done up until that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that came after Cavity broke up the first time.
Ah,
We broke
okay.
up and I had a few months, you know, until I had to leave town. And I always wanted to play in a, you know, kind of like a rock and roll type of band. You know, I mean, rock and roll, like garage rock, you know, I'm talking about, you know, with
Right.
John Bonanno, you know, who I had played before in Cavity. And I said, John, let's get something going, man. Like you, me, Chuck, he can play drums. And we got that rolling, you know, like, so out of their whole material, like at least two to three of their songs are based on bass lines that I wrote. So I got the band rolling for that. Not that I want to take all the credit, but I just told John, look, hey, I got time, dude. Like, let's do something, you know. And
And it's got to start somewhere.
yeah, yeah, and like, you know, I like the way you play, and I like the stuff we're
Right.
listening to. Let's try to do something like that. You know, we were both into like Crip records and all that stuff. You know, like heavy into that stuff. You know, and I said, yeah, let's do it. Why not? And we got Chuck, you know, on board to play drums, and that started, and we kept going. You know, like and then I had to leave town, you know, and I was like, okay, I left town. They kept it going. They recorded something more, you know, more concise, you know, to what they were writing and stuff, you know, but like at least two to three, you know, two to three songs from their repertoire, you know, they're my songs, you know, my bass lines, you know, but yeah, that was something like that I wanted to do. I wanted to play with John and I wanted to play this type of music. And he's really adept at playing that type of music.
Right.
We did it, got it done. And then, you know, I know it's out digitally, you know,
It is.
so
It
yeah.
is.
So it's cool, you know. So and since then, do you know what I mean? Like that other one that I told you about, Kilombo.
Right.
So that was just a project that I did with Ed Mathews. You know, he was invited to do some kind of like performance at this like I don't know, like a noise type of like event or whatever. And he's like, I was like, dude, why don't we play together? You know, with a drum machine. And he's like, cool, let's do it. You know, so we got together a few times, wrote two songs, and we played it. You know what I mean? So that was it, you know. But it was something else that I did. I came up with a little logo for the band. You know what I mean? Like for all these bands, I would come up with a little something. But yeah, we had a drum machine. It was just kind of fast, just like these fast songs, you know, with just like
Right.
stuff on top. Um, I think there's a recording floating out there, you know what I mean? But it's the live one, which in a way, it was good, but it wasn't like our best, you know what I mean? Because we had done like some other stuff in the practice space that sounded really good. You know, compared to that, it was kind of a bit more loose and stuff, you know? So,
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah, yeah. And then we get to my last project, I guess, the Johnny 99s.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, which is great material, man. Like stuff is being done on that record that I've always wanted to do. It was just mainly like, okay, so this is how this whole thing came about. In the past 2 years, I've had different art shows up here. You know what I mean? One in Palm Beach recently, and another one in Martin County. I had another art show. And the one in Martin County, I showed with my daughter and a friend of mine. My daughter, she's like, you know, she's 23 now. She's an artist also. And I said, look, you know, this lady at a coffee shop, she's like, oh, I put on shows all the time. Would you want to do something? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll take over the whole space with two other people. She said, no problem. We'll have an opening and everything. So I was like, cool, an opportunity to show my stuff. And I also want to play music. Are you down with that? She's like, yeah, sure, you can play music. So I got together with Brian, our last drummer from Cavity, and I said, dude, I got these bass lines and I want to play them. So you want to play? He's like, yeah, dude, I'll help you out, you know. So I got him and then his girlfriend to play drums. So she played drums, Brian played guitar. So we did a performance for that opening 2 years ago. And I played music that night too. And I was just like, cool, I want to record these songs. So I have these bass lines. I got together with Brian and then just things fizzled pretty much, because he was busy, couldn't get in touch with him, whatever. Um, so then I moved to Palm Beach last July. So I'm in Palm Beach. I started meeting people. There's a group of artists nearby. They have a warehouse. And they're like, you want to do a show? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like for 1 week. And I'm like, cool. Can I have an opening? She said, yeah, everybody has an opening. And I'm like, can I play music? And they're like, yeah, sure, you can play music, do whatever you want. So I was like, cool. So I called Chuck Lewis and Ed Mathews, and I'm like, guys, I want to play. I want to come up with a name for this band that I have these songs for. And I just recorded the tracks with Chuck, you know, and we practiced first. We practiced, everything sounded really good. And it's an instrumental band, which I've never done in my life. I always had a singer of some type. And I love instrumental music. I listen to a lot of like psych surf garage music,
Right.
the guitar, the twangy thing, just
Sure.
driving the whole thing. And I told Ed, dude, we're just gonna put, the rhythm tracks down. You're the boss pretty much, do this, do that, just go off. And that's what he did in that recording. So far we have 3 songs done. There's one more he's got to do. Um, but yeah, that one track that I sent you, man, it's just like he did everything I told him to do pretty much. And then he came up with those stuff himself, like, oh, use a slide for this part. Oh, crazy slide. At the end, that solo sounds like the New York Dolls, like Johnny Thunders. You know what I mean? Like, and so I'm doing all these things, and I'm like, dude, I've always wanted to have this done. Like I've always wanted to do these things, and we're doing them. So it's
You
cool,
think
man.
it's serious enough at this point to do a physical output?
Yeah, no, we are. Yeah, yeah, we're gonna do a
Okay, you
7 inch.
are.
Yeah, yeah, we have 4 songs that the amount of time that we get to, like it's enough time to do a 7 inch, 2 songs each on each side. So we are gonna do that. As far as playing again and all that stuff, I'm not sure. But at least finish the recording and just put it out there. And Chuck is gonna put it out on Tequesta Records.
That makes sense.
So,
It's been a few
but no, the
years.
Johnny 99s, it's based on that Bruce Springsteen song. Um, but yeah, I'm liking everything that we've done so far.
Nice.
And I like to do it more often. But again, people are busy, and I'm not saying anything about that. It's part of life. So let's get at least this much done, and then we'll see if we can do more. After.
Right.
So, so that's it. Yeah. So.
Well, it's great though that you're
Mhm.
still active in that sense,
Yeah, I'm
right?
producing some.
Considering where you
Mhm.
were, right? When you mentioned you were done with music,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
kind of
Mhm.
tapped out and weren't
Right.
sure if you'd ever really get back into it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it sounds like there's a bit of a
A renaissance or
life
whatever.
life after death, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, laugh after that type of thing. Yeah, yeah. No, I do love music, man. It's just like, I don't know. Again, growing up, you know what I mean? You just kind of don't have those friends that you had around because they're doing other stuff. They're in different places.
Right.
And Chuck is nearby, Ed is nearby, you know what I mean? And we click, you know what I mean? Like we're like, oh, let's do this. Okay, let's do it. Like and in that sense, it's really cool. Like again, they have their schedules, I have my schedules, like and I'm always kind of like moving around from place to place also, like so that's not great to like build like, these awesome relationships, you know what I mean? Like so um but whatever, try to make it happen, try to
Right.
document what's happening at the moment. And it feels good, man, and it sounds good. Like I
Great.
said,
Yeah.
listening to these songs, I'm like, God, this is so good.
Yeah.
So I'm
That's
happy.
great.
I'm very happy.
And that's important because if you're not
Yeah.
happy with what you're doing, then what's the point?
Right, right. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, yeah. So that's the main thing, man. So
I gotta bring up, because this is also super important
sure,
too,
sure, sure.
is the flyers
Mm,
of Cavity that you put out.
mm,
And talk about that for a minute, Dan,
okay.
because we talked about this before we started to record. Just me thinking, like, how
Right.
many shows did you guys even
I
do?
know.
Because it felt like even though
Mm, mm,
you had a good run, it felt
yeah.
like it could have been a 20-year run with how many shows you guys
Yeah.
may have played. So talk
Right.
about the book of
Okay.
the flyers and
Okay.
why was that something you decided it was now was the right
It was
time to
not the
do
time.
that?
Yeah. Okay. So I've been putting out zines for a long time. When I was younger, I did some too. Like, I even found some papers while I was moving. I was doing an interview with Underdog, that band with their bass player, and everything's written down. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I used to do a zine back then. I've always loved zines, and then I just put them aside. Once I finished art school, I came back, like, and there were a lot of things I could do in art school that I couldn't do outside of art school. Like, so how do I make my art? So I was like, go back to my roots, you know what I mean? To like paper, collage, photocopies, zines. Hey, I got to do this again. So I started making a lot of zines. And, I've been making them since I would say, I don't know, like regularly, you know what I mean? Since like I don't know, 2008 or something like that till now, like, so it's a lot of issues. Um, so anyway, I want to get more serious with that. Like I want to keep making zines, but I want to have like my own publishing endeavor, whatever.
Right.
So anyway, I came up with Hook or Crook Unlimited. Um, and then my first release, I moved to a new place recently, a smaller place than what I had before, and going through boxes and everything else, I found a bunch of flyers, from Cavity, and then other flyers too that I have from other shows, throughout my life. And I keep looking at these Cavity flyers, and I'm like, well, there's one common denominator in all of these is Cavity. And I was in that band. Why not put something together? You know what I mean? Because like most of the time that I put out a zine, it's just my artwork. This one has more of an appeal, like an outside appeal than just my art. Um, so I was like, okay, let me look at them and just see if I can put them in some kind of order or whatever. But I was like, yeah, no, I think that this is a time to be like my first release on my publishing house or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like to be the first issue, basically, number one, so it was mainly a thing, like I wanted to establish my name as Hooker Crook Unlimited.
Right.
And this came to be the one, like I'm going to concentrate on other topics. Like, it's mainly going to be like art influence, maybe not just by me, but maybe other people too. But the first one, it just felt right, to be this one, because I was involved with it, but it's not just all of my things in it. Do you know
Sure.
what I mean? Like I have flyers that
Absolutely.
I collected, so that was the thing. It was more to establish this and also to like just to document it again. I mean, like and just to show people, look, we played all these shows. And like you were saying, Jeff, I don't even know how many shows I've played, with Cavity or like overall with all my bands.
It was a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And then there could be some that maybe there's no documentation for.
I was wondering about that. Like, did
Mhm.
you have any revelations as you were putting this flyer book together? Like, wait a
Mhm.
minute, there could be a flyer or
Yeah.
two that I just
Mhm.
don't have and no one has provided it to me. Did that
Yeah. No, no,
happen?
yeah, I came into that. Yeah. And also like I've looked at a few flyers and I'm like, I don't remember this show at all. Not even this band who sounds like, you know what I mean? Like I've never met or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's been a lot of those too, like so it's just these like, whoa, we played this show? Huh? I believe it because there's a flyer, but I don't
Right.
I don't remember in any way, playing this show. So
Sure.
um so yeah, no, it was really enjoyable to just look through and put it together, you know what I mean? And then the response, people were really, really receptive and being like, "Hey, man, this is great," like it's great to see all of this, um, put together in one little format and everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like so the response of it has been really good, So
And I know this could be a tough question
sure, sure, go ahead.
as far as
Mm.
choosing one or two or three, but just your personal favorite flyers that are in the collection. Do any
Okay.
spring to mind as, and it may
Mm.
not even been the best show per se, but it's the flyer
The
itself.
flyer that made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see. Let me look through these a little bit. Like um,
There's
a
so many
bunch of
good
these.
ones.
Yeah, a bunch of these from the zine I made myself too. A lot of them. Um, there's some really good ones, man. I mean, like, hold on, I'll show you. Yeah, I love this one, man. It's such a great flyer. Like,
Yes.
and it's based on like a 1960s like
Looks like Woodstock.
Woodstock type poster. You know what I
Right.
mean? But it's a take on that. I love that one. Like
Sure.
then which one? I like the ones I did for Rorschach and Assuck. Like I'll show you now. These right here. These flyers, Machine, Assuck,
Yep.
I like those flyers a lot, man. Like
Do you remember what
mm,
promoted that design? Like, how did you land with the design of that one?
I think it was mainly Assuck. They used a lot of black in their flyers. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna do something similar to what Steve does, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like so I got there's like one of their designs is right there, the little guy, blindfolded. So I put that in the flyer.
Yep.
Um, but there are so many good ones, man. Like other ones. Let me see. Show you one more. I mean, I love this one these two I made myself too, but this one's really cool, man. Like
That is neat.
it's in color, like, and then this one on the side too is very minimal, but I made that too. I remember making it,
Yeah.
um, so let me
They're
tell you
both
this.
They're
Hmm.
both great. And one thing that kind of came
Yeah.
to mind too when I saw the Crumbs one, I know we mentioned the
Mhm.
Crumbs many times,
Yeah, yeah.
is the fact that you also did Out of Range, the artwork on that Crumbs
Yes.
album.
Yeah, I
Was that
did.
one
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the was that one of the first
Mhm.
album covers you had done outside of Cavity?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I haven't done that many, but like I knew John, really close with John, and he said, "Yeah, dude, give me something." And I said, "Yeah, here. You want to use this?" And he said, "Yeah, we'd like to use it." And I was really happy about that, man. It's like cool. Like, one of my best friends asked me to like, provide cover
Yeah,
for this stuff. That's really cool. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, and I've done some other stuff, man. Like that, I don't think I remember much about like, like covers and things, mainly for
sure.
Cavity,
Right, of course. Some of my
really.
other favorite flyers
Mhm.
you done
Sure.
from a venue down south was from Cheers.
Oh, yeah, 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 right. Mhm.
We haven't mentioned Cheers at
Yeah,
all,
yeah, we
but
have mentioned that too. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
such
No.
a great
Mhm.
place to see shows back in the 90s.
Yeah, it was. And here's one. That one right there. You see that? Damn Ad, Cavity, End of the Century Party. Have you heard of those guys? End of the
A-
Century Party?
Absolutely.
They're so
Yeah.
good. I think Eric was their singer. Really cool guy. You know what I mean? Like I knew one of them, like a really cool person. Um, and then it's a cool book, man. It's a cool zine to look through.
It really
Uh,
is. And it's
yeah,
great that you were able to compile the flyers and
right.
one, I mean, have so many of them that you could actually create this book because
Yeah,
even though you were in something, it doesn't mean you retained any of the
right.
artifacts from it. A lot of people don't, or things got
Mhm.
ruined or
Yeah. Mhm.
lost with moves and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you, like, there are 84 pages in there, and I think there's close to like 100 flyers. So I know that we've done 100 shows, like that. Probably more than that, like from other shows that, like that we never got a flyer from. Like,
Right.
I mean, people were good with sending things to us, like, or just we would get them at the show, oh, here, but sometimes that doesn't exist. So,
Yeah. It's pretty amazing though that you have
mhm.
that output of the flyers
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
just so many shows as you
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
already know.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think it's cool, man, and also to have lived, what I mean, to have lived that experience, to have that lived experience, you know what I mean? Like, oh, cool, I
Right.
did all these shows, and here's documentation. Yes, I went, you know what I mean? Like some
Correct.
validation or whatever you want to call it. But um, yeah,
Are
it's cool
people
looking back.
are
Mhm.
people still reaching out to this day seeking any new news around Cavity?
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago, somebody sent me like an Instagram DM or whatever, and they said, "Hey, would you guys want to play here on April something?" It's just like, nah, man,
That's
we're not
soon.
together. I'm serious. I'm serious. That plays in Tampa, and they're like, "Oh, would you guys want to play?" And it's just like, "We can give you this much money." And I'm like, "That's cool, man, but we're not together." Like, so I know people do still send emails or something. You know what I mean? Like some
Right.
kind of message saying, "Hey, would you guys want to do this?" So, you know, I don't know. I mean, like, are there other bands, man, who are together from back then? I mean, Bosom is not together. I mean, Neurosis is, I Hate God is, but I don't know. I mean, Floor's not together. Like, I don't know.
Sure.
Just saying. So,
But also too,
right.
not being in one of those other bands, you don't always know if they're being
Yeah, right.
contacted as well. So
Yeah.
the fact that Cavity is still a
Hmm.
draw for people to bring in
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. It means something.
absolutely.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I'm happy. Not that people are just, saying, "Hey, but you guys want to play?" I'm like, "Hey, sorry to say, but we're not together anymore. But thank you. Yeah, thank
And
you for."
also the style of music you guys played in so
Mhm.
many ways is kind of timeless. Like it's hard to date that stuff exactly
Right.
because
Mhm.
it doesn't have anything I feel like that puts it into a
Yeah, yeah, right, right.
category
Yeah,
of
yeah.
this period.
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely. That's a big plus. So I'm happy about that.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Well,
Mhm.
very cool. Well,
Yeah,
never say never. Who knows what the future could hold?
yeah, yeah. I know. I
We
know.
know the Johnny 99s though are what's happening now.
Yeah, right now. Yes. Yeah, yeah.
So super excited to see what comes of that project.
Yeah,
And
man. Me too. Me too.
yep,
Me too. Like at least I want to see the 7 inch done and then just giving it to people. You know what I mean? Like
right.
see what they think.
Very
Like so.
cool.
I mean, I'm very happy with it. So,
It's fantastic.
mhm.
So I appreciate, Dan, that you took the time out
Yeah,
to
yeah, no, I'm good, man. Yeah.
spend it with us, to take us on that ride. And
Thank you.
I imagine a lot of people who are checking out this episode, even those that may know you very well,
Right. Yeah.
will likely learn something new from the
Yeah.
story.
Hopefully. Yeah.
I imagine so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you get ready to close things out, I would love to
Okay.
give you the last word. Any final thoughts you want to share to the folks out there? I'm going to turn it over to you to take us home.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to say thank you to you, Jeff, and thank you to everybody who's ever, listened to the band and supported my efforts, in playing music, art, and things like that. A shout out to both my kids, Anna and Ari, my parents, for being supportive all the time, and and my friends, like a shout out to Chuck, Johnny, Ed Matthews, Renee, who's like a brother, anyway, and everybody else who played in the band too, like you guys are out there, do your thing, like, so that's about it, man.